We'd like to welcome everybody here to the Margate Planning Board, February 27th meeting, 2020. Would everyone please rise and do the flag salute? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Be seated. Could we have roll call, please?
Tom Collins,
Here.
Ben Wozleski,
Here.
Rich Patterson, Michael Cristaldi,
Here.
Jim Galantino,
Here.
Margaret Gubernalti, Craig Palmisano,
Here.
Stephen Giuseppe,
Here.
Remy Pelosi, Joseph DiGirolamo, Ron Gruppo,
Here.
Michael Richmond.
Thank you. This meeting is being held in accordance with due public notice thereof and pursuant to the New Jersey State Sunshine Law. Notice of this meeting was advertised in the press, and a copy of same has been posted on the bulletin board of the municipal building. Announcement regarding building permits and mercantile license. All applicants are hereby advised that should you receive board approval tonight, you must come forward and sign a form which informs you regarding the timing or receiving of building permits and mercantile license. At the end of your case tonight, please see the board administrator to sign the two form sheets. Could we have a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We also need to,
Approve minutes and decisions.
huh?
Resolution decisions.
Yeah, no, I'm looking here. Okay, they didn't give me the, yeah, I know, I didn't have that, okay. So, we need a motion to approve the decisions and resolutions of number 2020, Thomas E. Reynolds, number 11, 2020, Lee Ziegwick, number 12, 2020, Mark Goblik, and number 13, 2020, Michael Snow.
I'll make
Can I
a
have
motion.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
The first case tonight is Mark and Lori Rubenstein, 111 South Iroquois Avenue, Block 9, lots 22 and 23. Mr. McFarland, you want to read us your report?
Sure. Mr. McLaren, do you swear affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
And actually, before we get started, there's one case that's not going to be heard tonight. It's the Harding Avenue case, I believe. Is that correct? The
Yes.
Harding Avenue. So if anyone's here for the Zaidman and O'Donnell application, 117 North Harding Avenue, block 324.02, lot 12. That's going to be adjourned to the March meeting, which, sorry, Palmer, do you know that, March?
26.
March 26, 2020, 6:30 p.m. in this room. The applicant will not be required to renotice or re-advertise. So if anyone's here for that, I don't want you to sit here for a couple hours just to find that out. And with that, we'll proceed to the first application.
Okay. Thank you, Acting Board Chairman and Board members. My report is based on the application of Mark and Lori Rubenstein at 111 South Iroquois Avenue, Block 9, Lot 22 and Lot 23, which will actually be combined into one lot. It's within the S40 zone, required first floor bottom is elevation 14. This is in a coastal A zone. The background is as follows. The applicant is seeking relief from the ordinances of the city of Margate in order to construct a new beachfront single-family dwelling. The original submittal for Lot 23 received zoning approval with driveways located on Iroquois Avenue as driveways per the ordinance were not permitted to be located on Dolphin Drive. Subsequently, the owners have purchased the adjacent property with the intent to consolidate the lots and construct a larger single-family dwelling. The proposal is to relocate the driveways to Dolphin Drive, which is now permitted under the ordinance provisions from January. However, the number of driveways and curb cuts now exceed the number permitted and now require variances. Page 2 shows the zoning chart And highlighted at the bottom are the two variances. Page 3 of the documents reviewed. Section 3 on page 3, variances required. One is the driveway curb cut width, which is the total length. Whereas the total width permitted was 20 feet at the time of submission, and the proposed total width is 40 feet. The driveway curb cut number, whereas the total number of permitted curb cuts was 2 at the time of submission, and 3 are proposed. If this was submitted today, they'd only be allowed to submit one 10-foot wide or one 18-foot wide. No waivers have been requested. To keep my comments brief, the original submission was denied for having curb cuts on Dolphin Drive, and I pretty much touched on that. Dolphin Drive is now permitted to have the curb cuts where they actually exist today. Any condition of approval shall be proof of the lots being consolidated. I don't see that being an issue. The project, as mentioned before, is located within a coastal A zone and subject to those standards for construction purposes. There is an existing bulkhead on the seaward side of both properties, which will be one property. All lot coverage and bulk standards are being met. The right-of-way line is actually collinear with the curb line, and therefore a public sidewalk is not present. We cannot make the applicant install a grass governor strip, as there's no room to put one in, but they do have adequate landscaping that would meet the intent of the ordinance for landscaping. Street trees are not required along Iroquois Avenue, so they don't have to put those in, because that's a beach block, beach view. Section 6 discusses the testimony required to approve the variances requested. It's a C2 criteria. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. McLaren. Mr. Chairman, or Mr. Collins. Chris Balinson for Mark and Lori Rubenstein for their property at 111 South Iroquois Avenue and 10 Dolphin Drive, Block 9, lots 22 and 23. This is a project with a property on Dolphin and Iroquois and a property on Dolphin. Formerly 2 houses. It's going to be 1 house, probably about 6,000 square feet, give or take. And the only variance we're asking for is a variance that arrives as a function of the lots being consolidated into one lot, taking away one beachfront house essentially, and making one large house in the 2 lots. What we have is 3 driveways where 2 would be permitted. We have 2 10-foot driveways on the one side and 1 20-foot driveway on the other side. If the lots were not consolidated and there were 2 lots that would be permitted, we wouldn't be here, we'd have a building permit. But once you take away the center line, the variance is required. You'll hear from Chris Halliday, who prepared the plan, that the existing curb cuts on that property are in excess of 55 feet. We're asking for a total of 40. The entire application has no other variances. The entire house is variance-free and conforms to the ordinance. And I'll let Chris touch upon the actual variance and
Sure.
why it's a good thing, not a bad thing.
Great. Yeah, the Rubensteins purchased the corner property.
Chris, you need to be qualified and sworn. I'm sorry.
Just state your name and address for the record.
Chris Halliday, 73 Spruce Road in Ocean City.
And Chris, you're a licensed professional architect?
I am.
Good.
You swear affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
You've designed houses under Margate's ordinance and appeared before this board before?
Not this board, but I've designed houses in Margate without variances.
And he's a New Jersey architect.
I am.
We're accepting.
So the Rubensteins purchased the corner property on Iroquois and Dolphin, went in with building permits, received building permits, and that house is currently under construction. They had the opportunity to purchase the interior lot subsequently to starting construction, and have done so, which kind of changed the plan to enlarge the house for their growing family. So the Dolphin Drive curb cuts going into what was the main house,
The corner house?
the corner house, are by right curb cuts going into that garage. So when they did the addition, in order to accommodate additional people into that addition, that is why we're here with the additional curb cut.
So there's 2 10-foot curb cuts on the interior, there was the interior lot, and a 20-foot curb cut on the corner lot.
Correct. Two 10-foot curb cuts on the corner lot, a 20-foot curb cut on the interior lot. Currently, there is a connected curb cut that is 51 foot 10 inches that allows for 2 off-street parking spaces on either side of it. So we're kind of breaking that up into 3 curb cuts, which allow for 3 off-street parking spaces. You can see that in the existing site plan, which is on the upper part by the 1 South Iroquois site plan, above the proposed. Here, this is the existing curb cut, and then we're proposing this curb cut and this curb cut, which allows the 3 parking spaces where 2 were there before.
And Chris, if this remained 2 houses and 2 lots, the curb cut configuration would be permitted?
Yes, at the time of submittal, yes.
So one of the benefits of this project is we are reducing density by reducing the number of homes?
Correct.
And another benefit of having these separate driveways, and we don't think about it, it prevents a large parking pad with 6, 7, 8 cars in one spot.
Correct. It prevents you from having a fully raised house with 4 garage parking spaces that are back to back. This allows for 4 parking spaces that are along Dolphin, as well as the additional parking spaces in the garage.
And still allows for 3 on-street spaces.
Correct.
And the entirety of Iroquois Avenue frontage is curbed, so that's available for beachgoers coming and going from the beach.
Parking dropping off and picking up, yes.
Do you see any downside or any negative should the board choose to grant this variance?
No.
That's all I have, Mr. Chairman. Members of the board.
I have a question. You say you're reducing the density because you're having one building?
Right.
But that one building has 9 bedrooms.
Right.
Nine bedrooms.
Okay.
That's as big as two houses, a 5-bedroom and a 4-bedroom.
And the house fits as a conforming home on that lot.
It really looks like a hotel, but
Well, we don't know yet, because it's not built yet.
it's not built yet, but the plans show it like that, that's what I'm saying.
It's a nice,
9 bedrooms to me is,
Mr. Palmer, it's a nice big house, and it's a luxury that not all of us get to enjoy.
so they have 8 parking spaces for the 9 bedrooms.
We're not required to have 8.
No, but you have eight for the 9 bedrooms, because there's no parking on the streets, right?
That doesn't have anything to do with parking on the street.
I know. But you're bringing 8
We
cars,
are providing for 8 spaces, that's correct.
providing for 8 spaces. Okay.
Yeah, the Rubensteins have a growing family, so they have 4 kids, grandkids now, and then themselves, and so 6 adults, which kind of drive down to different areas.
Anyone else on the board have any questions?
Chris,
Yeah,
can you park on those streets in the summertime?
yes.
No,
Well, not on Iroquois, in Dolphin you can.
no, not in the daytime.
After 5.
In the cul-de-sac? Look, I don't live there, so I assume
do.
in the cul-de-sac you could.
I didn't see any signs about parking in there, so that's why I'm at. Roger, do you know?
I'm not sure, it'd be an ordinance. I didn't check.
No parking 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. summer.
It's not public portion
Well,
yet.
who's that? When we get to the public portion, you can speak.
Just take me across the Dolphin Street side.
Yeah.
It's going to be curb cut,
10,
space.
10, it would be parking space on the street,
Yes.
10, 10, parking space? Or parking space
Yeah,
between the
exactly.
2 tens?
So parking space on the street, and then 10-foot curb cut, 7'3" area, 10-foot curb cut, and then another parking space that's 20 feet long, and then a new curb cut, and then an additional 20-foot curb cut, which is all kind of aligned on their property. Currently, there's a 30-foot area, and then a 26-foot 11 curb cut to the property line, and then a 24-foot 11 curb area that's curb cut, and then another parking space. So currently-
Actually, it's creating more curb space, 10 feet more curb space.
Than there exists now.
Now, just there right now, there's 50-some feet of depressed curb right now, running attached between the 2 properties.
I saw it.
Any other questions by the board? If not, we will open it up to the public. If anybody in the public would like to speak, please come up and be sworn in.
State your name and address, please.
Gray Lequier, 3 Dolphin Drive.
Can
I
you
am,
spell your last name? I'm sorry.
yeah, L-E, capital C-U-Y-E-R. First name is G-R-E-Y.
And you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
Yes.
Thanks.
All right. So first, in the petition, I read, it's at the City Hall, said obviously the 2 houses would be granted. I object to petitioner's lawyer's dangerously presumptive, specious, and arrogant statement. If you're stating conclusions as opposed to arguments, why are we here? Why even bother? Neither the attorney nor the petitioner live on Dolphin Drive. They can't and don't know what the traffic volume is like. Tourists, we have the lost, we have curious, we have prospective buyers, we have dog walkers, people just walking by, checking it out. We're no less congested than any other street in Margate. We noticed when there were no neighbors and residents, except one, me. We have 4 properties for sale on Dolphin Drive, 4 summer people, and now 2 owned by petitioners. That leaves just me. 6 on the Iroquois Beach block are also seasonal as well. So it's convenient noticing that no one's here to complain but me. In the summer, there's very limited parking on Dolphin Drive as it is now. If we have a party, which I do, people can the few spaces are down at that end, in front of 10. 10 Dolphin Drive, there are 2 or 3. I don't see, looking at the plans, it looks like they're not going to be adding spaces, they're taking away. There are 3 existing now. There's one that goes to the corner toward Iroquois on Dolphin, existing. Then there was a big driveway from the old house, from Rich's house. Metz's, which is number 10, had a driveway in front of their garage, and then a driveway, a long driveway, so it's a long cut. So you could get 3 cars there. By looking at it now, looks like there's not. So far, what they've built on the Iroquois lot, which is technically 11 Dolphin Drive, but it's, I guess, Iroquois. I see two garage bays on Dolphin and another bay on Iroquois. I'm not sure why there's a big space looks like a garage to me. It's not a garage?
No. It was permitted originally as a garage, but subsequently, as the ordinance changed, the parking
It's a
spots were moved to
microphone.
go. That is not permitted.
Oh, you used the mic.
Sorry about that. When the original structure was permitted, it was required to have the parking off of Iroquois. So that's how it was designed. That has been scrubbed now, so that'll be filled. So there will not be any parking off of Iroquois.
Wall up that opening.
It'll be fenestration, windows, yeah.
I know what fenestration is. And it's Iroquois, no, we don't pronounce the S, as long as you're designing there.
Sorry.
So the special accommodating, I'm not pleased with taking away the few spaces that exist remaining to accommodate a magical first story that now no longer counts in height limits, which now blot out the sun. This thing is so tall as it is on the part that they built. It's another Margate McMansion. Between all the driveways and the garages and proposed cutaways, sorry. The project has already resulted in spreading cracks in our ceilings and the pounding in the walls from the first stage demolition and pile driving, which I'm sure the petitioners intend to repair. I appreciate that. This construction crew blocks the street as it is, screams epithets, tells me to go around the other way. On the cul-de-sac, you can't go around the other way. We've got debris that has been and continues to fly from the half-demolished house at number 10, tar paper and trash gathering in the street, on the lawn, and the bushes, and all along the stunning dune fencing. There's also a garage bay. We did that. It's too much. So that's it. There's not. I don't see by the planning. Can you show me where the number 10? It looks like there's another garage with you. Is that with the pool house and the gym and the entertainment room and the cabana is going to be?
So this is the existing with the space here, and then the old curb cut, and then the existing curb cut here, and then this the space here.
Right.
So now we're adding a 20-foot space kind of in between where the curb cuts were
Where
before.
the pool is going to be in here.
The pool's going to be back here.
Right.
Yeah. But the parking space is going to be here. And then there's parking, curb cut over here between the 3 off-street parking spaces.
So is the rule now that you don't need one parking space per bedroom? Has that changed? That used to be a thing?
No, it never was. One
and a half.
and a half to 2 for one parking for 2 bedrooms.
So I know number 9 used to have, they had a garage that they converted into a bedroom, which means now they have in the summer 6 to 8 cars where they have parking for 2 off-street. So there's just, in the summer, when everyone's actually there, which is the only time they're there, there's nowhere to park. People on top of each other, and they park. You can park 10 to 5 a.m. allegedly, although when you call the police, they don't come. So there's very limited. Then after that, like for the fireworks and 4th of July, they'll park wherever they want, in the driveway, in the lawns. It's a zoo. So taking away, it still looks like it's taking away spaces that were there as it is now. So
Great. As to the trash and the debris, I'll make sure it gets cleaned up.
beach too. I mean, I don't care about the
I'm
beach,
not,
they're hideous.
I
but-
mean, I'll do the best I can.
Yeah. So,
What Jim's telling you is that is not the purview of this board. Most of your complaints are building department as far as the type of home and the house. We're not here to hear any of that. We can't make a decision on that. It's by code permitted. So the only thing
we
we're
can
really.
have that hotel-like size
You can have
property.
that by code.
Beautiful.
That's what he's
I
allowed
agree
to
with you.
have.
It looks like a hotel. It's huge.
Well, that's what the law is. So what we're here to determine is whether we want to give them the curb cuts or not. And according to the testimony by the expert, they're not losing parking spaces, so I don't know where you're seeing that they are and he's presenting, but I didn't see where they were either. So,
Were they losing or not? Because currently there's two in front of, you can get two cars in front of
and
number
according to the
10 and one,
applicant's
two at the end.
expert, they are not losing parking spaces. And that's
Yeah,
on the
sure.
record. so-
Based on this survey, so you have the curb cut here and the curb cut here. So that
This is
is,
the existing.
right, existing, exactly.
You can
Yep.
get two cars here now.
You can get one, I'm just talking about the area in front of this property. So you can get a car here and then a car next to it. You can still get that. We're just increasing one spot where the curb cut was previously. So now in front of this property on Dolphin, there's 3. Whereas in front of this property,
But you're also pushing it further down here, aren't you? Because that's where the bays are.
we still have
You want a
the,
driveway in front of the bay to get into the garages.
well, the bay is here. So we still have the 20 feet required for the off-street parking here.
Chris, let me ask you this question.
Sure.
There are 3 off-street spaces provided now with this design?
Correct.
And Mr. Locklear, you testified that there were 3 spaces previously as well?
There were 3.5. You could fit 3.5.
Your testimony was there were 3, right? 3 parking spaces. So that would be the same as being provided. Does that make sense to you?
It makes sense to me if there's actually 3 spaces. I'm looking at what's there now and what's
It's
going in.
It's on the plan. You
I
said
can
you had a
see
look
it
at the plan. It's on the plan.
Chris, can I speak up for you?
Please. Thank you.
Between the two driveways is 37.5 inches, which gives you 18 feet 9 for each parking space between the two driveways.
Unless they paint the arrows so they have extra space on either side of the driveway, you're planning on street marking.
No, they can't do that.
They can't?
They could put the line straight out and come back, but they can't. They can't take it back that, can they, Jim?
These curb cuts are,
Chris.
Is there anything else?
That was it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate your input. Is there anyone else from the public that would like to speak? I see no one. We'll close the public portion. Anyone from the board want to make a comment? No? Mr. Bellinson, any? Okay. Mr. Manos, could you frame us a,
I'd like to point out that they are not seeking a parking variance, they're just seeking the curb cut. They're actually supplying twice as many parking spaces off-street that they're more than obligated to provide.
Agree with everything in Roger's report? Okay. Someone needs to make a motion for C variance relief for the driveway curb cut width. You're permitted 210s or 120, so basically 20 feet in width is permitted. They're proposing a total of 40 feet, and you're allowed 2 curb cuts, and they're proposing 3. So that's the second variance from the number of,
I'm sorry, just one variance for the number of curb cuts?
It's to total width.
Total width?
the total
And a
width
number.
also. So yeah, those are the 2 variants, total width and the number of curb cuts. And the conditions will be, the applicant will comply with any representations it made during the course of the hearing, and those conditions set forth in Mr. McLaren's report of February 26th, 2020, unless modified tonight on the record.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second it.
Tom Collins,
this tonight case is actually very de minimis. Per testimony, which means that it's on the record and it has to be, we are not losing any parking. We're actually gaining off-street parking onto the site. And we can't change what's there. We can't change the house. It's not up our decision if somebody wants to put a hotel-looking place or a cottage. You know, that's not our decisions tonight. So I vote in favor of it.
Clem Osleski,
Parking's a problem in Margate, has been for years, probably always will be. But this application, I don't think creates any additional parking problems. The way I read drawings, the amount of on-street parking at least remains the same, and having 8 off-street parkings places is certainly very desirable for a project of this size. I vote in favor.
Michael Cristaldi,
Well, if we took two 10-foots and, if we just put two 10-foots there, you would not add any more parking, because you'd only have 10 feet left. You can't park a car in 10 feet. So with doing what they're doing, you're still ending up with 2 parking spaces. I don't see any problem at all with it. I don't see any negative to it for the neighborhood. I vote yes.
Jim Galantino,
I think the applicant showed the hardship by the, by him removing the amount of lineal feet of the curb cut. And the benefit I see is the fact that we've gained 11 feet, I think, more curb. So I vote yes.
Craig Palmisano,
I'm not a fan of additional curb cuts. In fact, we've changed the ordinance and we're limiting curb cuts now. But in this case here, I hear your concerns as a neighbor, but they're showing 3 spaces out front still. And so I'm gonna have to approve you. I vote yes.
Ron Grupo,
Yes, I heard the complaints of the neighbor, and I think that what the Rubensteins are proposing is going to alleviate some of the parking problem there. They're still going to have the 3 spaces that were always on the street, and they've made parking for 8 vehicles on their property, which if they didn't park on the property, they'd have to park somewhere on the street. So based on that, I vote in favor of the project.
Stephen Giuseppe,
We will be adding more parking on the street. However, if the cars are in the driveway, if they use them, it would work well. And that's my concern, is that people aren't using their garages. But because of what has been brought forward, I will vote yes.
Thank you very much.
Let the record show the motion passes 7-0. Chris, you want to see Pam? You want to sign that first?
Go ahead.
Our next case is the application of Randy Seiden, 78508 Bayshore Drive, Block 1004.01, Lot 15, Zone S50, for a C variance and to expand non-conforming setbacks. Roger, you want to read your report, please?
Sure. Thank you, Board Chairman and Board members. The report is based on the application of Randy Seiden at 7508 Bayshore Drive, Block 1004.01, Lot 15, which is in the S50 zone. This is a substantial benefit variance. The background is as follows. The applicant is seeking relief from the ordinances of the City of Margate in order to construct a second-floor addition, which will expand several non-conforming setbacks and standards in the Margate City ordinance. Page 2 indicates the zoning schedule for the S50 zone. There are 5 variances highlighted, all related to the setback and the expansion. Page 3 indicates the variances required, and they are as follows. Front yard setback to the building, whereas 12.92 feet is the prevailing front yard setback for buildings, 11.23 feet exists and 11.23 feet is proposed, requiring a variance. Again, because they're making the wall higher, it's an expansion of a non-conforming setback. Same thing for the side yard, minimum side yard setback, whereas the minimum side yard setback is 10 feet, 4.77 feet exists, and 4.77 feet is proposed. Again, this is an expansion of a non-conforming setback by adding the second floor at the same location. Minimum combined side yard setback, whereas the minimum combined side yard setback is 22 feet based on lot width, 9.87 feet exists and 9.87 feet is proposed. Again, this is an expansion of a non-conforming setback. Minimum off-street parking spaces, whereas a minimum number of 9 by 18 parking spaces based on 6 bedrooms is 4. 2 spaces exist and 2 spaces are proposed. This is based on section 175-36 parking schedule 2. Excuse me, 2. This is another expansion of a non-conforming situation. And again, last variance is minimum roof pitch, whereas the minimum roof pitch above the first floor is 5 on 12. A flat roof exists and a flat roof is proposed. Again, this is an expansion of a non-conforming situation. No waivers have been requested. My comments are as follows. Both the front yard setback and side yard setback at the area to be expanded do not meet the minimum setbacks required, and an expansion of the non-conforming setbacks is proposed requiring variances. The combined side yard setbacks are not further being expanded vertically. Provided that the 2-car garage is usable, an off-street parking space variance is required as the number of bedrooms is proposed to increase from 5 to 6, thereby increasing off-street parking requirements from 3 to 4 spaces, and only 2 spaces are provided. The house has a flat roof, which was likely permitted at the time of construction. Not permitting a flat roof for the addition would look severely out of place, even though roof pitches of 5 on 12 or greater are required. The area of the proposed roof is relatively small, and the variance request is de minimis. The property is nicely landscaped. I don't think any additional landscaping comments are required or necessary. The property is subject to 50% substantial improvement requirements, and that will be determined at the construction permit level. The proposal should not be considered a hardship case, as the area is much larger than required, and the shape of the property does not lend itself to the cause of the variances. Again, this is a C2 criteria, so I will turn it over to the applicant.
Mr. Valency?
Roger, Chris Balanson for Randy Seiden. Randy's representative, Howard Seiden, is here tonight on her behalf. The Seiden's own property at 7508 Bay Shore Drive. It's block 1004.01, lot 15 in the S50 zoning district. Roger, Howard, Mr. Seiden just corrected me that there is currently 4 bedrooms, not 5, in the house.
Okay, well, the tax assessor's office has 5, so you might want to talk to the tax assessor.
Okay, so Howard testified that it's 4 going to 5, not 5 going to 6.
Still need a parking variance.
Of course, I understand, but it's 1 versus 2. What is proposed this evening is for the side, is that their existing 2-story home at the corner of Bay Shore and Barclay is the conversion of an outside deck, which is set back approximately 4.77 feet from the neighbor's property line to enclose that second floor deck to provide an additional room. It can be a multi-purpose room. I identify it in the application as a bedroom. I don't want to come in here with a expansion like that, and everybody's thinking, heck, it's a bedroom. Why do you do that to us? I'll just come out because somebody would say, call it a bedroom, ask for the variance. That's what I'm doing. Mr. Seiden tells me and will testify that the house currently has 4 bedrooms. It's going 4 to 5. That kicks in a 1 parking space variance. Let me deal with the parking space first. There are 2 spaces in the garage. The front pad, the driveway in front of the garage is not a conforming space, but Howard will testify that it has accommodated and can accommodate 2 cars without issue, and that's the way the house was designed. It was designed as a driveway, permitted as a driveway, showing parking. But the property line runs up into the driveway, so it's too short. But there is ample parking on site for 4 cars. The addition necessitates variances for setbacks only because the existing conditions are non-conforming. There's a side yard setback of 4.77 feet. That is a variance. It remains the same. There's no further encroachment for the wall that goes vertically. The front yard setback is it's only about 1 foot 6 inches off. That's the front yard on Barclay. Again, it's an existing condition. We're just taking the wall vertically from there. The fact that the side yard is short kicks in a combined side yard deficiency of 9.87, where 22 feet is required, because there is a frontage of, I think, probably 60 feet, which kicks in the highest that is required of 22 feet max. The last variance is for a flat roof. It is a flat roof house, and trying to put a 512 pitch, or to put a 512 pitch on that, I hope Glenn will help me, would not look right. Unfortunately, it's a situation where the flat roof works with the property. John Barnhart is our professional engineer and planner. He can testify with respect to the variances. I've touched upon what they are, and we can take it from there. John?
John, just your name and address for the record, and I'll swear you in.
Yep.
John Barnhart, office address 400 North Dover Avenue, Atlantic City.
And you swear affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
I do.
And we'll accept this qualification.
Thank you very much.
Planner,
John.
engineer.
John, your office prepared the plan that's been submitted to the board for their consideration of this variance?
We prepared the variance application plan, yes.
Not the architectural plan. Mr. Lolio, who's here, also prepared the architectural plan?
Correct.
John, would you take the board then through the zoning of the property, and then what is proposed, and we can then touch upon the variances?
Sure. As Chris already went through in detail, the property is located in the S50 zone. The property currently contains a single-family structure. It's a two-story, single-family flat roof structure. Very nicely kept piece of property. The proposal is to expand the building, but really only vertically. The front yard setback that exists now, the side yard setback that exists now, is existing one-story structure with a second level that has a roof deck and a retractable awning for outdoor living space in that area. The proposal is to enclose that footprint to create additional second floor space that would then connect to the existing second floor. What we took a look at was the appropriateness of enclosing the space at that specific location because it does create a number of nonconformities or I'll say variances with doing so. And what we looked at is really what the impact is to the neighboring property, because that's kind of really the key here. And with the position of the building adjacent to us, you can see we have an outline of it here, and if you're able to visit the property, the majority of that's a brick structure, the majority of that structure has no windows in it. There's one small window on the second floor in the back, and then one window on the lower floor, approximately in the middle of the building. So the whole front of this building for both stories has no windows in it. So there really is no, in our opinion, negative impact to the adjacent structure. The proposal is not to come any closer to the front, side, or rear property lines. But because of the existing nonconformities that are there today, when we expand vertically, by law, that all those nonconformities are exacerbated and become variances. And as Chris pointed out, the requirement is 12.92 to the front. That's the front yard average. The existing building is at 11.23. We're proposing to match that at 11.23, so it creates a variance of just over approximately 1.5 feet. The side yards are the same situation, where the requirement is 10 feet. The existing condition is 4.77 feet on the side. We're proposing to match the 4.77 feet. With regard to roof pitch, as Chris already mentioned, the building is a flat roof structure. It is a very square-looking structure that has a lot of symmetry to it, and the proposal is to match the building to create a pitch roof at that location. I think would look, from a planning perspective, would look out of character and unsightly as compared to matching the structure. So that is why a flat roof is proposed. And then the last discussion was with regard to parking. It's my understanding the house has a two-car garage right now. There is a driveway that leads off of the street, which that area is deficient with regard to its total depth for parking. I know it's been utilized for parking for years, and this is a little bit of a unique condition that Margate doesn't have in very many locations. There's no sidewalk along here, so there really isn't. When you have a car that hangs over the property line, the biggest concern is, are you blocking the sidewalk? Somebody from walking by behind the car, creating an unsafe condition because it forces them out into the street. In this location, there doesn't happen to be sidewalk. It's a very mature landscape area, and there is no sidewalk. So if you were to go to the site and look at this property, you would think that that driveway is more than adequate as far as its depth because of the fact that the sidewalk doesn't exist at this location. So while there is not 4 legal parking spaces on the site, there has been 4 spaces on the site for many years. It's been used that way. But because they aren't of adequate depth to that front property line, the variance, is technically required because we are adding a parking space, so we are increasing the parking demand on the site.
And John, when you incorporate the right-of-way beyond the property line, because obviously there's sufficient depth. to
Yes,
do the parking.
that's correct, that's correct.
John, what is that depth?
I'm gonna estimate it's about another 10 feet, so you probably have from the face of the
25
garage to the
25
curb, a little over 20 feet. And it gets better, it depends on where you measure it. The house is a little closer here, and it gets better because that front property line is on a curve.
I had an
Yes.
average of about 23 feet.
Okay, there you go.
John, with respect to the addition, now the addition doesn't encroach any more into either the Parkway Avenue front yard setback or the Bayshore Drive front yard?
That's correct.
front yard setback?
That's correct.
It's difficult to say what the community benefit is from a project like this, but we've talked about it, and quite frankly, there is some benefit to enclosing outdoor space that's located within 5 feet of a neighbor.
Yeah, right now you have a second floor exterior deck with an awning. Promotes the use of outdoor space, it creates noise, things of that nature, which is 4.77 feet from the side property line. While this is additional mass on the site, it does create, or I should say eliminate the potential for that noise and other nuisance that can take place as a result of a second floor deck.
And you're not aware of the side yard going in for variances to build out into that side yard or that front yard? That appears to be the way
I
it
am
was
not, no.
originally constructed?
Yeah, I am not, I am not aware of that. My guess is that goes back to the days when side yards were permitted to be 3 feet, but I don't know.
In light of the fact that there's no sidewalk at this location and the house appears to have been designed like that, do you see any downside or any detriment to leaving that parking configuration the way it is and having a portion of the car be for the right way it need be?
No, if the sidewalk were there, it would be concerning to me, but because there's no sidewalk, it really does not create any kind of a safety issue for the public or for passersby of the property.
And from a design and aesthetic standpoint, do you agree that the flat roof for this particular structure is a better finish than trying to create a pitch?
Yeah, I would say it's a better planning alternative to match the structure and make it a more harmonious addition than creating a pitch roof just for purposes of meeting the ordinance. I think that using the flat roof is a better planning alternative than creating a pitched roof.
And obviously incorporating existing space like this deck to craft your new room as opposed to where you could go up to the third floor in a location like this by right. This is obviously a better planning alternative to doing that, creating an additional street density.
Yeah, you could do 2.5 stories. You could have tried to increase footprint in other areas. This is, if you're going to try to obtain additional interior square footage for the creation of a space or a bedroom, however the room is going to be used, this is probably the least impactful way to do it, in my opinion.
Do you then think variances can be granted without substantial detriment to the public good without impairing the intended purpose of the plan or zoning ordinance?
I do. I think that obviously, as Roger pointed out, this is certainly not a hardship situation. This is a C2 type of application. It's an aesthetic enhancement to the site. As I mentioned, it removes the potential nuisance issue with regard to a second floor exterior space within close proximity to the side property line. With regard to the negative criteria, is there a substantial detriment to the public good? I discussed the neighboring property, and given the specifics of the neighboring property, we believe that this is an appropriate request and does not create a negative impact to the neighbor. With regard to a substantial detriment to the zone plan or zoning ordinance, if we had a blank slate, we wouldn't be asking for these variances. They're working within the confines of the existing building footprint, and we believe that the request is appropriate.
There's no additional degradation to the zone plan or zoning ordinance?
That's correct.
That's all I have for Mr. Barnhart. I have Mr. Seiden just to give a couple comments. Howard, if you would. You need to be sworn.
Sure, Mr. Hyden, Mr. Hyden, just state your name for the
Howard
name and address.
Seiden, 7508 Bayshore Drive.
And you swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
I do.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Howard, as the project is described by John sounds accurate to what you propose?
Yeah,
The existing conditions in the house, how many bedrooms do you have right now?
well, 4, but I guess downstairs, it could have been used as a bedroom, I guess, if they thought about it. Like when we never thought about it as a bedroom, but I don't know where, that's must be what they're calling it.
And the room that's proposed upstairs, that's to accommodate your family?
Yes.
In what way?
We have 2 grandkids now, so You have to make room for them.
So what is that room that isn't a bedroom?
We just use it as a TV room,
Okay.
On the first floor?
first floor.
Any other bedrooms on the first floor?
No, bedrooms on the first floor.
Does that room have a closet, Howard?
Which one?
The TV room?
First floor?
Downstairs? No.
Have a bathroom?
Huh?
Is there a bathroom in it?
Well, there's a Jack and Jill bathroom, for the kitchen and all that stuff, you
For
know.
the powder room?
Yeah, powder room. But it's also had a bath, shower, because when you come in off the deck or whatever like
I
that,
got
there's a
you.
bath, but no closet.
And Howard, the purpose of this addition is to enlarge your master bedroom?
No, it's not the master bedroom, it's a little bedroom to put bunk beds for the grandkids.
Okay.
And have them on the second floor with the other bedroom?
Right next to the mother and the father.
The parking out front on the driveway,
Yeah,
has there ever been a problem? Can you accommodate 2 cars?
yeah, we can park 2 inside and 2 on the outside, but back on Base Road, there's no parking issues at all. I mean, I
Right.
guess like you're talking about Dolphin Drive or whatever.
Plenty of on-street parking?
Oh, yeah, plenty.
Summertime as well?
Never a problem with anybody.
And you talked to your neighbor on the Barclay Avenue side, am I right?
I did talk to him.
And you told him exactly what you're doing?
Yeah,
And he's recently, I think, doing the same type of
yeah,
project?
he did something similar. He had no problem with it.
Okay, and he was okay with what you're doing?
Yeah.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you very much. Thanks, Howard.
Okay.
Anyone from the board have any questions? Carmen?
This is probably for Robert.
There you go.
The existing bedroom is going to lose a lot of windows. Looks like the only window opening you have in there is through the closet. Are you going to meet the code requirements for glazing and
And
lighting?
Mr. Lolio, let me just get you sworn in. Just
Bob Lolio, the architect, will need to be sworn as well.
just state your name and address for the record.
That's Robert Lolio, 219 Bellevue Avenue, Hamilton.
And you swear affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
I did.
And Mr. Lolio has appeared before us numerous times, so we'll accept his credentials.
So the existing bedroom,
Yeah,
the one that,
Talking about the side windows, going to be losing the side windows?
well, they're losing the windows to like,
Onto the deck.
this is the street side. So the only window in that bedroom is actually in the closet.
so the concept was not to create a closed closet. That's one room with built-in wardrobe.
Yeah, I don't see a door on it.
There's no door.
But is that window adequate to meet the code requirements?
It's going to be an egress size window.
Well, yeah, but how about the 8%, 5%?
Say that again?
The 8%, 5% for glazing and operable.
So it's a casement window. It can be a smaller, it's a smaller window, but it will meet the egress.
You can meet the,
Yeah.
all right, Jim?
You make an egressable casement window, the hinge is on the, it's offset.
I'm not concerned about
Oh.
egresses, I'm concerned about the light and air requirements of the code.
Well, he's not putting a door on the closet.
Yeah, but is the window big enough?
I'll make sure it is.
Okay.
Bob, is there other, are you adding any other windows?
Into that bedroom?
Yes. Bedroom, right, is the closet, the bathroom?
We were gonna keep, well, there's an existing slider.
Can you get closer to the microphone, please?
He's like,
We're adding a window in the existing bathroom. And
Yeah.
then there was an existing slider out onto the deck.
Yeah, but that goes.
That goes, but we're more than likely gonna add French doors there to bring in light from the bar light.
I don't think that meets the code.
so, Howard, no. So nonetheless, you're adding 2 windows to the master bedroom? One in the bathroom, one in the bedroom?
One in the bedroom, one in the bathroom.
The bath doesn't count.
I understand. I understand. I'm just trying to get out what's outside.
It's a 4-foot tall window. Like
Just-
2.5.
Just so the numbers work.
Thanks, Bob. That's all I have.
Any other questions by the board? Seeing none, I'll open it up to the public. Anyone in the public have any comment? Seeing none, we'll close the public portion. Mr. Manos, could you frame a motion for us, please?
Yes, everyone's comfortable with calling it a one parking space variance. We'll credit the applicant's testimony as to the bedroom. It's just a function of the number one space or two, but someone needs to make a motion for C variance relief, front yard setback to the building of 11.23 feet or 12.92 feet is required, minimum side yard setback of 4.77 feet where 10 feet is required, and minimum combined yard setback of 9.87 feet where 22 feet is required. For the parking, they're going from 4 bedrooms to 5, which requires 3 parking spaces, and they have 2 legally sized spaces, so there's a variance for 1 parking space. And the minimum roof pitch, where we don't permit flat roofs, but the addition's gonna have a flat roof over it. The conditions will be, the applicant will comply with any representations it made during the course of the hearing, and anything else in Mr. McCartan's report of February 24th, 2020, unless otherwise modified tonight on the record.
We have a motion.
I'll make that motion.
A second.
Tom Collins,
This is a pretty simple, cut and dry case. You're really tied into the constraints of your property. Your property is a very unique property with the construction and the size and the flat roofs. I would almost think the city would give you a license to go across that right away for not much of any expense if you wanted to legalize that as a driveway spot, but you're just as well getting the variance from us. I know you're going to use all 4 spaces. Not too many people walk in that neighborhood, and there's not a lot of tourist traffic. So I give you a lot of credit. I think I'd rather have my kids in a room, grandkids, instead of on a deck overlooking a pool where one of them might want to say, oh, let's jump in and see how good it is. We don't want to do that. So I vote in favor of the application.
Clem Wozleski,
The yard setbacks are strictly a function of having the new walls be continuations of the existing walls. If you had to meet the required setbacks on the 2nd floor, you couldn't even do the project. As far as the parking's concerned, the unusual situation without a sidewalk and the existing parking extending out to the curb, it's worked for years. It'll continue to work. As far as roof pitch is concerned, to do anything other than continue the existing flat roof would be architecturally ridiculous. So I vote in favor.
Michael Cristaldi,
In agreement with Clem, I see no negatives on this whatsoever. The flat roof doesn't bother me. The parking's been that way for years. I vote yes.
Jim Galantino,
Is that a Bob Johnson house? You can see it right away, right? Flat roofs everywhere. I felt bad for you when you first came in and you go, do I really need to get a variance for? I'm like, yeah, you have to get a variance because you're continuing a non-conforming aspect of that wall. I can see the driveway can accommodate the 4 cars. And I think Mr. Balanson did a great job explaining that. And they don't really stick out into the street at all. I mean, you have plenty of room between cars to get around. And the existing wall is just, that's the old setback. So I don't see any negative detriment to the situation, so I approve this application.
Craig Palmisano,
Oh, Howard, nobody came here to protest your addition that you wanted. And all the variances are expansions of existing nonconformities. So it's really not affecting much. And like I said, nobody was here to protest it, so I approve it.
Ron Grupo,
I agree with my other board members. The project is driven by what's there already, and I think that, based on the plans, the parking, I don't see it being a problem. I approve.
Stephen Giuseppe,
No, that one? I agree, you have an existing house, existing conditions, and there's nothing else that you can do. And you're right about the roof being, you can't do it, so I approve.
Application passes 7-0.
You'll take care of it, okay. Thank you.
Our next case tonight is the application of Richard and Susan Rosenthal, 3 North Iroquois Avenue, Block 210.02, Lot 14 in the S25 zone. Roger, you want to read your report, please?
Sure. Thank you, Board Chairman and Board members. The report is based on the application of Richard and Susan Rosenthal, 3 North Iroquois Avenue, Block 210.02, Lot 14 in the S25 zone. The background is as follows. The applicant is seeking relief from the ordinances of the City of Margate in order to construct a new single-family dwelling that requires 2 variances as identified below. All other bulk standards are being met. Page 2 is the zoning schedule for the S25 zoning district. Towards the last third of the schedule, you'll see the 2 variances required. One is barely requiring a variance. Documents reviewed are at the bottom of page 2, section 2. Section 3 indicate the variance is required. First one being front yard landscaping, whereas 60% of the front yard must be landscaped with vegetation, and 57% is proposed. There was an error on the plan that indicated 51%, but Peter and I have talked, and I agree with the 57% that he's showing now. The second variance is the third floor deck. Third floor decks are not permitted at this location, and one is proposed. I also cite the section of the ordinance that does not permit the third floor decks. No waivers have been requested. The comments are as follows. Front yard landscaping is actually 57%, as I just described, versus the 51%. The off-street parking requirements are affecting this requirement of the front yard landscaping. Third floor decks are not permitted at this location. One is proposed. The deck does have a roof around it, including a pent roof, which softens the look, and I think that is somewhat what the board is looking for with third floor decks, that it looks like it's inset within the building envelope. The third habitable floor appears larger than 535 square feet, and I'll leave that up to the applicant to discuss that. The rear AC platform looks larger than needed and has direct third floor access. I hope that's not used as a second, third floor deck. Again, all the other requirements are being met for zoning. Again, this is a C2 criteria, and I have comments in the recommendations that the applicant can agree or disagree to, but I turn it over to Mr. Bailenson.
Thank you, Mr. McLaren. Chris Bailenson for Richard and Susan Rosenthal. The Rosenthals are here this evening with me at 3 North Iroquois for a new home, Block 210.02, Lot 14, the S25 zoning district. Mr. McLaren described the application. This is an application for a new home that we are requesting a third floor deck in the front of the house, which we believe is designed by Peter Weiss, consistent with the parameters that this board has found to be acceptable, in that it is tucked into the building with a roof design all around it. In other words, it's walled on each side and in the front. So it's not a situation where you have a platform like a diving board hanging over the sidewalk for parties and whatnot to disrupt the neighborhood. It's a small sitting deck tucked within the roof line. As Roger went through the report, he notes that there is a 3% variance for front yard landscaping. It's 57% versus 60%. That 60% is easily accommodated if you were to look at the continuation of the strips that go toward the garage for parking. The ordinance now does not allow us to calculate those areas under a deck, although from all outward appearances, that's your front yard. You still see that, it's still irrigated, it's still part of the landscape package. It's just based upon the way the ordinance is drafted, we're not allowed to include it. Although that area doesn't count toward building coverage either. It doesn't count toward building coverage, you're not allowed to landscape it. So I was kind of in a conundrum as to how to use it in the overall lot calculations, because we don't have a lot coverage calculation in our ordinance, we have landscaping. So I think it's really just a technical deficiency that Peter can address a little bit better than I can. And he will address the third floor issue with respect to its square footage and show you that it is a conforming third floor. Peter? Whenever you're ready.
Mr. Weiss, just state your name and address.
Peter Weiss, 101 North Washington Avenue.
And you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thanks.
The
We'll
board will
accept
accept.
his credentials as an architect.
Peter, if you, would you prepared the variance plan and the building plan for the Rosenthal property?
Yes.
And would you kindly take the board through the zoning of the tract, the property and what is proposed, and then the variances and some of the discussion that Mr. McLaren had?
Okay, so we're proposing to demolish the existing building on the lot, which is rather old. Construct a new three-story building over parking and storage. The ground floor will have parking and storage. The first floor will have the living spaces. Second floor, 3 bedrooms, 3 baths. Third floor, 2 bedrooms, a bath, and a sitting area. The exterior will be fiber cement panels, metal roof, and all glass rails. The building meets all the bulk requirements except for, excuse me, front landscaping, front yard landscaping. So if you look at the site plan, all the green in front of the building there is front yard landscaping. The calculation on that is 67%. It just so happens that a portion of that has a deck extending over it, which is about 40 square feet. So that technically, under the ordinance, reduces the landscape coverage to 57%. So the landscape is still going to be there, whether it's covered by the deck or not. So you still have the full advantage of, seeing the landscaping from the street. And the deck will be at least 8 feet above the landscaping. So my position would be, well, even if we cut the deck back a couple feet, the deck's, the landscaping's still going to be there. So the landscape.
There's no delineation of that landscaping from the rest of the landscape package? I mean,
Correct.
it's just, it runs right?
Oh, yeah.
It's irrigated like everything else?
Yes.
I'm sorry.
And I think the deck's high enough that it's not going to prevent it from getting sunlight and, plants growing, that sort of thing. The third floor deck, as mentioned, it's on the front. It's 11 by 5 feet. It's right in the middle of the building. It's sort of recessed into the roof. And I think it's an aesthetic improvement, and it's also, makes the building safer in the event of a fire. You have better access to the third floor.
And Peter, the third floor deck is not does not enjoy the same setback as the rest of the building in terms of the front yard, am I right? The setback
Correct.
further?
Yes. Further back.
How much further from the front setback requirement, if you know approximately?
Chris, can you take
Yes,
that
yes,
extra?
I can tell you. So from the floor below, it's set back 2 feet. That's right.
So an additional 2 feet, and obviously it's set well within the side yards. It doesn't come out fully to the side yard requirement, am I right?
Yes, it's in about 7 feet on either side.
Okay, thank you.
I could touch upon the rear deck, I guess. Okay, the rear condensing unit platform. You could say it's accessible from a utility room. You need a certain amount of space for the condensing units for maintenance, and they have to be able to breathe. So, they take up a fair amount of space, and as every year they get more efficient, they get bigger, they need more space. So, I was, part of the reason it maybe grew more than you normally would see is because, we're trying to keep the third floor area down, so it's got to come from somewhere. So we took it off the back of the building, thinking that, well, nobody's ever going to go back there. And I was also trying to not have a situation where I have to have scuppers in the back. I know I have a couple in the front, but I'd rather not have the scuppers in the back, which is the only other way you could drain the roof, unless you take the deck all the way to the rear of the building. So that was my thinking on the condensing unit platform in the back. As far as the third floor goes, I went back and looked at this again. When I originally did the calculations, I don't know if Roger's going to have an issue with this. I included the stair and the elevator. But if you look at it, well, I guess there's an argument to be made that you shouldn't include the stair in the elevator. First of all, the elevator is basically a one-story element, goes from the ground floor to the roof. It's only one floor, in fact. There's no floor at the third floor. Same goes with the stair. So if you do a calculation where you don't include the stair and the elevator on either floor, either being the second or third floor, the second floor then comes out to be, because there's about 80 square feet between the elevator and the stair, 996 square feet, and divide that by 2, you get 498. And if you subtract that out of the third floor, you have end up with 470 square foot of living space.
And that's conforming.
Yes.
Roger, our discussion is, if you don't calculate them on both the second and third floor, does that fall within the
If you count them both or don't count them both,
we can do either way.
just compare apples to apples, that's all I want to say.
So Peter, if we calculation where you don't
Correct.
count them either the second and the third, that's a conforming 50% third.
Yes, we'd be under by almost 30 square feet.
My theory is it should be a wash either way.
Okay.
Right.
Are you okay with the way Peter just explained it?
I'm okay.
Very good, thank you. Pete, with respect to the third floor deck and the landscaping, 3% deficiency, do you believe that those variances will have any substantial detriment to the neighborhood, to the public good, to the community?
Not at all, no.
And aesthetically, you believe that the third floor deck, and obviously the whole landscape package, is an improvement to the property, it makes the property attractive and desirable?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, that's all I have.
I do want to point out, if those exterior steps are actually in the front yard, he would get a credit for that as per our ordinance, and would probably meet the front yard landscape requirements.
Probably or would?
I'd say he would. I mean, I think the steps are fine where they are. I'm just throwing it out there that if those steps were allowed to be in the front or required to be in the front, our ordinance permits, they give you a credit for that.
Actually, though, Chris, at this point, we've already heard the testimony,
That's fine.
and for a 3%,
I'm gonna leave it alone.
I was gonna say,
It's,
why would you take it off and then find out later
I'm
you
gonna
need
leave it
it?
alone the way it is.
Peter, I have a question for you. Roger's big comment was the platform in the rear of the house. The condensers today, maybe 30, 32 inches. You've got 13 foot 3 inches in the back. It's bigger than the
17's here is 4
front
foot.
deck. And I understand where you're running it all the way to the edge for drainage, not a problem, but I think the width of that, you could shrink quite a bit and still be able to work on it.
You're gonna ruin the roof line.
But what would you accomplish?
You're ruining the roof line.
You're gonna take out a whole lot of space where you could actually use it.
But he can't make his second floor, third floor any bigger, he's already up there.
I'm saying
Am I
for
correct,
for a
Pete?
deck, I'm saying you can use it as a
You're
deck.
gonna ruin the roof line. You ruin the design of the building.
Then he need another variance.
All right. You don't need that.
Okay.
Pete, thank
Is
you.
there a question there?
Good, no, no. I have nothing further, thank you.
I do have a couple of questions for Peter real quick. On your site plan, those grades that you show, are they proposed or existing?
All right, so they're existing.
But you're pretty much going to maintain that same existing grading drainage pattern? Looks like it drains from the rear to the front, which is what we want ideally.
Yeah, yeah.
I think we should try to swale those side yards so nothing goes sideways, goes this way. Fine.
Clem?
I don't know whether Peter, you, on that street from Leonard to Winchester, are there any third floor decks on either side of the street, on any of the buildings?
I haven't noticed any.
Six. No, 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 no.
I didn't see anything.
I didn't see any either. So, and what's the status of our position on third floor decks now? It's been kicked around so much.
I don't think it's changed since the last 12 meetings.
We're still, no.
I think, no, it's still no.
Clem, the discussion has always been that there's a desire to allow third floor decks but to control the proliferation of them, bring them before this board to make sure that the design is consistent with what the city wants to see.
I agree with that. That gives us some leverage and control over how they look.
That way you get the deck tucked into the roof line, you don't have, like I said, a platform hanging out over the sidewalk.
Right, each one's on its own merit.
That's right,
You know,
that's right, and we've been talking
how
about
we
this
feel
for
about
15
it.
years.
Is there any other questions by
I don't
members
think
of the
those third
board?
floor decks will ever get used.
Pardon me, Glenn?
There's decks on 2 other floors, and these are off bedrooms. You might walk out in the morning and say the sun's shining, and walk back in, and that'd be the end of it.
They know how to dress.
They're expensive, and sooner or later they leak.
Any other questions by members of the board? If none, open it to the public. Anyone here from the public would like to speak? Seeing no one, we close the public portion. Mr. Manis, could you frame us a motion?
Someone needs to make a motion for C variance relief for the following: front yard landscaping, coverage of 57% where 60% is required, and to permit third floor decks where they're not permitted at this location. And the applicant will comply with any conditions made on its behalf during the course of the hearing and any other conditions in Mr. McLaren's report of February 24th, unless modified. Night.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second it.
Tom Collins?
The only question I really didn't like here was the third floor deck. I'm just not a big proponent of third floor decks, but in this case here, I agree with Mr. Cristaldi. The building lines, the way the building is tucked in, the usage that you're getting out of this, I really don't feel that there's any negative to the neighborhood. It may be the first with a deck, it may not be the last. But for what you're providing and what you're doing, I think it's aesthetically and pleasing to the neighborhood. I think it's good for the city. I don't see any negative impacts. The landscaping is very de minimis. We almost could have gotten rid of it, but I think it's smart keeping the variance in. And, I can understand the rear and the platform and working on it, so I see no negatives to this. I vote in favor.
Clem Osleski?
The small variance that they want for landscaping, I think can almost be ignored because, as the applicant has mentioned, the landscaping can be extended in under the porch. And I'd hate to see him have to give up one of the parking places just to satisfy that 3%. However, the third floor deck, we don't permit it. There's none on the entire block either side of the street that I could see. I don't think it's at all necessary to the design of the house, and I don't think it's needed for the family living because there are other decks. I have to vote no.
Michael Cristaldi?
As far as the rear deck upstairs, if they go to a 17 seer that's roughly 4 feet, architects have a tendency of jamming stuff together, you can't even work on it. Leaving the design of the house go where it looks good with that and not trying to choke it up, I like that part of it. As far as the front deck, for a fire escape, not basically a fire escape, when somebody in here says, try to carry a 200-pound man down a 40-foot ladder is not easy. So I'm okay with the deck. The 3% coverage on the front, I see no problem with. So I'm in favor of the application.
Jim Galantino?
I look at it this way, they're removing a 2,700 square foot non-conforming house with 2-foot setbacks around the whole property. You can hardly get down to one side without scraping that one fence. And they're making a wide open house that's accessible all the way around with third floor decks that are recessed into the structure. The benefits of the deviations would substantially outweigh any detriment, so I approve it.
Craig Palmisano?
I agree with Jimmy Galantino's assessment of it. And it's pretty minimalist on the landscaping in the front. And the third floor deck, I approve.
Ron Grupo?
I agree that the third floor deck, you know, our intent is to have them tucked in, and with the pen wall in the front, I think you did a nice job on that. So based on that, I approve the project. The landscaping is de minimis.
Stephen Giuseppe?
Yeah, the third floor deck will look good, but I start to get bothered by every time we want to encroach a little bit more and take some things. This is a brand-new house, and I think we should stay within the rules. So I vote no.
Based on the 3% landscape efficiency.
Application passes 5-2.
Thank you all very much.
Mr. Balanson,
Mr. Collins.
thank you for your efficient presentations tonight. You made 3 cases within an hour.
Yep.
And I would like now to acknowledge that Mr. Patterson, our chairman, is here and the
Oh,
meeting
no
is
wonder we did
over.
it so quickly.
I've never complimented you.
Yes.
Yeah. Did you do this?
Please, look at the chairman.
Okay. All right, the next case is Elisa Lapidis, 1 East Gilmore Circle, Block 609.02, Lot 95, located in the S40 district, seeking C variance relief for building coverage, front yard setback, and possibly others in order to construct an addition. Taxes and water payments are current, and proof of advertising and notifying have been satisfied. Mr. McLaurin?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Board members, my report is based on the application of Elisa Lapidis at 1 East Gilmore Circle. If I mispronounce the name, I apologize. Block 609.02, Lot 95, within the S40 zone. This is both a hardship variance and a substantial benefit variance. Background is as follows. The applicant is seeking relief in the ordinances of the City of Margate in order to construct a 3-season room addition within the S40 zoning district. The room is proposed to not have conditioned space and will be below the base flood requirements of the city's flood damage prevention ordinance. Several variances are required due to the unique shape of the lot, which creates a hardship situation. Page 2 is the zoning schedule. Page 3, Section 2 indicates the documents reviewed to develop this report. Section 3 are the variances required. I want to point out that Mr. Ovalanis and I have met a couple times, and I think the owners too, about what could they do with this, and we finally got to this plan that you're seeing here tonight. So the variances required are as follows. Front yard setback to the building, whereas the prevailing setback is 19.4 feet. Existing is 6 feet, and the proposed setback is 6 feet. And I cite the location of that ordinance. The second variance required is a building coverage, whereas the building coverage is permitted to be a maximum of 30%, 28.1% exists, and 31% is proposed. No waivers have been requested. Again, to the unique shape of this and size of this lot, they're very limited to what they can do, and they're just taking an existing open porch, putting 3 walls on it with a roof, a bunch of windows, and that's it. So, Mr. Ovalanis, or?
Thank you.
John, name and address for the record, please.
John Obelenis, 102 South 8th Street, Vineland, New Jersey.
And you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
I do.
Thank you. All right, and we'll accept his credentials?
Yes, we will.
Appeared before us as an architect.
Thank you. So the project is to take an existing deck with a trellis cover on top and use that same footprint to add this, what we call a three-season room. And I thought I'd like just to introduce my client real quick, if you don't mind, just to have her introduce herself and just talk about why we're doing this.
She needs to be sworn in.
Sure. State your name and address, and I'll swear you in.
Lisa Lapidus, 1 East Gilmore Circle, Margate.
And do you swear affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Just to give you a little background about myself and my husband, we are from Bucks County for many years. We rented down here for a while, loved it, decided to buy a house. After, I believe, 46 years of marriage, my husband followed me here. I love it here. My mother says this is my happy place. Our family has grown. We have 3 grown children with families of their own, 5 grandchildren so far. They are here during the year, periodically, but they're here every May, the beginning of May, till the end of September, every single weekend. So we have a lot of kids with a lot of toys and not a lot of place. So it's take the coloring books and the puzzles off the kitchen table to eat. My one grandson loves cars. So we're trying to not trip over the little cars that he plays with and the motorized cars. So we thought about this area that we had outside, and we thought, well, it'd be nice if we could sort of put walls around it so we could watch them, read a paper out there, and have a little place for them to have their games and toys and things like that. It would make our time with them happier. My one granddaughter, as soon as she sees that Margate Tower, she's like, oh my God, we're near Mom's house. She loves it here. She doesn't want to go home. So we thought this might make things easier for our family life. And we live here now permanently for the last 4 years and work here as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
So as you can see with the front yard setback and the porch setback, obviously it cuts this addition in half. But again, we're working with an existing footprint. And I'll address Roger's comment about building coverage. I did calculate, included that shed that was attached. So the coverage remains at 31%, so it's 1% over. When we converted that deck into a building shape, that's what pushed it over. The idea is that what I call a three-season room is that this is a space that where we're going to maintain, there's existing weather strip doors that go out to that deck. We're going to keep those doors so the house itself is sealed off to that addition. An addition itself is not going to be heated. It's not going to be cooled. It's going to be basically a waterproof, what I call a waterproof construction, where it becomes a space with windows, 3 walls, and a roof. But the idea that even though it's an addition to the house itself, it's separated by waterproofing. The doors to the outside are going to maintain it. We're going to build a structure that's going to be basically waterproof, perhaps a slab on grade. Where the BFE is, we're going to create, if it's drywall, it's going to be waterproof drywall, so there's no, should there be a flood, what's going to be built, it's not going to be damaged from flooding and stuff. It's going to be kind of a waterproof structure up to that BFE. I know the requirement is that any new work or new additions have to meet the BFE requirement. That would require us to do about 6 or 7 steps once you enter that space, which basically kills the space. And there's no room, once you have the steps coming up to a landing, and the landing, there's not much left of the space itself, and we're trying to work within what is that footprint of the deck itself. So again, calling it a three-season room, I guess the idea is that once the children are out of sight, out of mind, they're still safe in a three-wall. Yeah, but the idea is that you walk out straight into that space, not having to walk 6 or 7 steps to get to that space in the back. Basically, that's the project. It's pretty simple.
John, if we approve this, there's going to be a condition for 3 street trees in the governor's strip. Is that acceptable?
The grass strip on the sidewalk on the outside, right now, there's not, we would have to, so it is acceptable to the client.
All right, see Mr. McLaurin, and he'll explain which trees, the size of them, and everything, okay?
And pretty much that's the project.
Any questions from the board? Jimmy, do you have any comments on it? I just wondered. Okay. Yeah. Greg?
Yeah, just,
I'll get you.
one
Go ahead,
question.
Greg.
Do you plan on rebuilding the deck anywhere?
Well, they have a front porch. They have a porch itself along the front that meanders.
That's gonna be
So that's going to stay. Yeah.
Tom?
Just on your comment on the street 3 street trees. I know that area very well.
Mhm.
I think you really should have Mr. McLernan look at it because you might not want all 3 out.
Well, it was his recommendation, so I was just passing his
Okay.
recommendation
No,
along.
I'm just saying, because of the
Yeah.
curve and the traffic flow.
Yeah.
You block it. You
Okay.
block the site.
You could say up to 3 street trees in the discretion of Mr. McLaren or something
Well,
like that.
no, I didn't want to change the number. I wanted to give him the discretion if it's going to block or cause
Gotcha.
a safety hazard.
Well, that's why I
to
asked her
put
to
it on
see
the-
him, right.
On
right.
the inside.
The
instead of
canopy's
out.
high enough that you should be all right.
Okay.
But
Yeah. But that's why I said see him and he'll work it out, but there'll be 3 trees there, yeah.
I'd say this is a classic hardship case with the prevailing front yard setback is based on all the homes that are basically in a normal shaped lot. This is at the end of it, and they're being, that front yard setback pushing all the way back. It really reduces the usable space based on setbacks. This is an extreme hardship case, in my opinion.
Well, it cuts the lot in half, basically, very little left over if there were a new house and stuff, so.
And you still have that yard on the side out further, so that doesn't change, so. Anything else from the board?
John, you said it's not gonna be heated or cooled or something.
It's not going to be heated, there's not going to be any insulation in the walls. The idea is that if we do a slab on grade, there's no, it's pretty much like a porch.
Why not you're doing more windows, it gets, sun gain?
It's a discussion I had with my clients about a balance between windows and interior space for perhaps shelves to hang up toys and things, there's toy storage and stuff. It's mostly for the children. We believe that the children don't care about hot and cold, they're gonna go out there and they're gonna play, and as opposed to adults and stuff, so.
It just seems like it's screaming to be an old-fashioned sun.
Please, I know, and that was, we went back and forth, and not to argue with my clients, but it was a balance between less windows, and I pushed them this far to have what's 3, and they'll probably agree with me that, it's.
Different strokes.
We tried to find a good balance between window count and wall space on the inside and stuff, and this was the result. That we met halfway.
Anything else from the board? Is there anyone from the public want to comment, questions? Public portion is closed. If there's no other comments from the board, would you read a motion, please?
It's a motion, someone needs to make a motion for C variance relief for the following 2 variances. A front yard setback to the building of 6 feet or 19.4 feet is required, and building coverage is 31% proposed, where 30 is the permitted maximum. The conditions will be that the applicant will provide for 3 street trees in the governor strip based upon input from Mr. McLarnon and any other representations made during the course of the hearing and any other conditions in Mr. McLarnon's report dated February 24th.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Tom Collins?
Pretty simple. You have a very odd-shaped property. There's nothing you can do. You can't stretch it, you can't square it. It runs in the circles. That's what they are back there in all 4 of them, 5 of them. So I feel that this is a hardship. I think that keeping it as a all-season, a 3-season room instead of trying to make it a permanent addition or going up higher, is kind of respecting the size of the lot in the corner you're on. I think it fits in nice. I don't see any negatives to the neighborhood. I vote in favor.
Clem Osleski?
These odd-shaped lots on all the circle blocks throughout town always give us a problem, and we just have to recognize it and go with it. So I vote in favor.
Richard Patterson?
I don't feel the visual impact is going to be much difference with that deck and trellis that you have there now. If this was a whole new addition to the house, it might be different, but I see no downside to this. I vote yes.
Michael Cristaldi?
With the rest of the board members, I see no negatives to this whatsoever. I vote yes.
Jim Galantino?
Why don't you move down here full-time? Become a full-time resident?
Well, we are. This is our only home. We've been here since we bought the home.
Oh, okay.
That's why I said to my husband, I'm gonna give up my job and work down here, and he followed us.
Oh, good. I missed that part. So the lot did the hardship, and I don't see there's a detriment for the substantial benefit, so I approve the application.
Craig Palmisano?
It is a true hardship, and I approve.
Ron Grupo.
Yes, I agree. I don't see any detriment to the project, and I approve.
Application passes 7-0.
Thank you.
Next case is Alan Goldberg, 9617 Pacific Avenue, Block 130, Lot 30, located in the MF District, seeking a C variance relief for side yard setback on both sides, combined side yard setback, and possibly others, in order to construct a new single-family home. Taxes and water payments are current, and proof of advertising and notifying have been satisfied. Mr. McLaren?
Thank you, Board Chairman, board members. My report is based on the application of Alan Gorberg at 9617 Pacific Avenue, Block 130, Lot 30, within the MF zoning district, meaning multifamily. This is a hardship case and a substantial benefit case. Background is as follows. The applicant is seeking relief from the ordinances of the City of Margate in order to construct a new flood-compliant single-family dwelling with variances being requested for items addressed below. The existing structure is to be raised and the site is located within the MF or multifamily zone. The proposed use is a one-family dwelling, and therefore single-family zoning rules apply as per Schedule B1 at the time of application was made. The hardship exists from the fact that the lot is only 25 feet wide, and the lot is a buildable lot since there is an existing structure on it by definition. The S30 zoning was contrasted with the MF. Page 2 is the zoning chart, and page 3 continues the zoning chart. Section 2 on page 3 indicates the documents reviewed. Section 3 are the variances required. These are bulk standards, and they're all related to each other. The side yard setback to the building and the decks on the right side, whereas the minimum side yard setback is 5 feet, 3.5 feet is proposed. The side yard setback to the building and decks on the left side, same situation, where there's a minimum side yard setback is 5 feet and 3.5 feet is proposed. So there's two variances of 1.5 feet. Combined side yard setback, based on the two side yard setback variances requested for both the buildings and the decks, whereas a minimum combined side yard setback is 10 feet and 7 feet is proposed. So a variance of combined side yard setback of 3 feet is requested. Waiver is requested, copy of an area map showing all lots within 200 feet of the property. 1C, copy of the professional survey at a scale not smaller than blah, blah, blah. And 3.2, survey older than 1 year. Some of my comments are as the areas within the MF zoning district, but the proposal mostly resembles S30 zoning based on lot size. And again, this is until the zoning changes went into effect. That MF zone shall use the chart to the left for single-family uses. Comment number 2, the minimum side yard setback for residential use for the existing lot width is 5 feet. 3.5 feet is proposed on either side for both the building and the decks, front and rear. The minimum combined side yard setback for residential use for the existing lot width is 37% of the width, which calculates to 9.25 feet. Since the minimum side yard setback is required to be 5 feet, the minimum combined side yard setback is 10 feet. That's not being met. Building coverage for this lot is being met. The front yard landscaping and total landscaping requirements are being met. A planting strip is not shown and shall be incorporated into the compliance plans. The applicant shall provide proposed grades for the public right-of-way for the sidewalk, the curbing, and driveway. Sidewalk should not exceed 2% cross slope. Some minor corrections. In regard to the waivers, checklist item 1A may be granted without detriment to the application. Checklist item 1C and 2 should be submitted as a condition showing topographical information as the property abuts 4 different lots. There's a little bit of concern about drainage patterns being met. That concludes my report, other than the recommendations, which I leave it up to the applicant to agree or disagree. Eric?
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Eric Goldstein on behalf of the applicants. Just for sake of jurisdictional requirement, applicants are Alan Gorberg and Pamela Stein. I think it was just down incorrectly as a typo on the Rogers report. We do agree with everything contained in Rogers report, and Just by way of, to reiterate what Roger said, what we have here is really a true hardship, 2 hardship cases in a row, which is rare. We've got a buildable lot, which is 25 feet wide. Obviously, a structure can be built on this lot. So in the Gorbergs' desire to have a house there, they went to Terry Cummings, who is here and she's going to be sworn in a minute, to design a house. And the goal here really was to design a house that fits in as best it can in the neighborhood. It's an MF zone. It's a single family, but it's 2 stories over parking. She tried to minimize the mass of the house, but obviously it needs variances because to comply strictly with the ordinance, you could have a 15-foot wide house. Clearly, that's a little bit narrow, no matter where you are, but she didn't go out as far as she probably could have gone. She wanted to keep it as close as possible to being a by right structure. So 18 inches on each side is really what we're talking about. Had she designed it 18 inches smaller on each side, we wouldn't be here at all. But to get a little bit more width, get a little bit more space inside, that's really what we're looking for, 18 inches per side. Roger's report is correct. We're talking about meeting or exceeding all of your other bulk requirements, most importantly, front yard landscaping, where 60% would be required. We're at 84%. Terry designed a house that's under the building height. We've got 4 parking spaces. Everything else is met completely, other than these 2 little quirks on a relatively narrow lot. Having said that, I don't want to speak for Terry, so I'm going to have her sworn in. Her design is outstanding. Mr. Wosletsky has the picture in front of him of what the rendering is going to look like. So if anybody wants to see that passed back to them, I can walk that over. But before we get to that, Terry, if you would please be sworn by Mr. Manos.
Sure. Just state your name and address, please.
Terry Cummings, 102 Arbor Court West in Linwood, New Jersey.
And you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Ms. Cummings, you appeared before the board on many occasions. Would you accept her as a professional? Terry, you've accepted your qualifications as an architect, so why don't you walk us through exactly what you designed and tell us about the house and all the great stuff that's going to be here if the board approves.
And you stay with the microphone.
I will, Mr. Patterson, thank you.
Okay, so we have this narrow lot that has obviously several challenges. I wanted to start off by showing you a photo of the house that is there today. The house has been there a long time. It's an older home and does not meet most of the requirements of the lot. In addition, you can see that it actually sits right on the property line. So I have a small version of the site plan here showing the existing home that sits on the property line.
So, Ms. Cummings, just to make the record clear, the existing house has a 0 lot line setback if you're looking at the house to the left side, correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
So, of course, we wanted to improve on that with the design of the new home. Now, the intent of this home was to design a small home that would take up the least amount of space on this lot. The fact that we only had 25 feet from the beginning was to make it as narrow as possible and still work. Now, one of the issues is that both Pam and Alan have elderly parents who come to visit. And because of the location of the lot and the parking requirements, we need to have the first floor garage. So part of this design was to design the elevator, which was a must-have. Once we put the elevator into the design, there was no reasonable way to do a 15-foot wide house. So we expanded the house to 18 feet wide, asking for that 18-inch on each side into the setback to allow for that design.
And Terry, I'm going to stop you real quickly. The house that's currently on the lot is not in any way flood compliant, correct?
That's correct.
And you've designed the house that meets all the base flood requirements, both for FEMA and for the City of Margate Flood Prevention Ordinance, correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
Okay. Also, the fact that due to the narrow lot in the neighborhood, we made a point of only designing a 2-story home. It is a 2-story home over a grade level garage. And that was intentional. There is no 3rd story, 50% thing. So we kept it to a 2-story home, so it is well below the height requirement, as well as keeping to the front and rear setbacks.
Now, just to follow up on that, there is a roof on top of the 2nd floor, and there's some notations on your plan. What's above the 2nd livable space?
Just attic.
Okay.
Strictly, there's no stairs that go up there, but we do need a spot to put some of the utilities and mechanicals, and we are utilizing that attic space, which is why we have a steeper than normal roof, because we're well under the line we need to be at. we have that space to get some of those mechanicals up there.
But there's no possibility of conversion, there's no future use of that attic other than mechanicals and,
Absolutely not. I asked the homeowners at least 20 times, if you want to talk about a 50% third story, tell me now. They said absolutely not. They don't want it, we're not going to do it.
okay. I stopped you a number of times, so I'll let you speak and I'll be quiet.
Well, I'm not going to repeat all the different ways we meet the lot requirements, because we've said that already once. But I do want to point out to the fact that we actually have 4 parking spaces on our very narrow lot. 1 10 by 20 in the front yard, and 3 that fit in the garage space. We accomplished this by having a side entry where we have stairs that go up and an elevator and a little bit of storage space for outdoor furniture and stuff. We are utilizing the backyard. In fact, that was one of the reasons the homeowners picked this particular lot. They wanted to have some access to the front so they can people watch on the street, but they really wanted to have a nice sized backyard, something they don't have now in their condo, to enjoy. So we have stairs that take us from the patio in the back up to a deck above, and we have small decks in the front. I can show you the rendering of our proposal here. You got that? Okay. And obviously, with the setbacks that we have, there was not much we can do design-wise on. We have straight sides, and that is the nature of a 25-foot wide lot. But we took great pains to make an interesting front, and you can see that underneath we have the garage door with the parking, a deck above that can be open to the street, and even the master bedroom on the top floor with an even slightly bigger deck, just to give some interest and aesthetic value to the front of the house. I already described the ground floor to you. This is just a bigger version where you can see the 3 parking spaces. The outdoor shower has been tucked inside, the storage room for any outdoor furniture right here, and the rear stairs that take you up to the next level.
Terry,
Yes.
I have a question on that parking.
Yes.
On the inside, you put the driveway in the center of the building, which is nice and all, but when you go into the garage for the 3rd and 4th car, it's like a 2 or 3 foot jog to the left. So when you back out, you're liable to hit the columns.
No.
No? Well,
No.
you're a good driver.
No, we're going to have a 12-foot wide garage door. And while we do have the 4 spaces, and they're legal spaces, they really have only 2 cars.
My only concern was the jog inside the garage.
Yeah. No, the intent that they'll be using that for car space is going to be just a occasional use. They can get in, there is a jog, the elevator, there was nothing we could do to avoid that. But there isn't that much of a turn. It can come out and in pretty easily if they want to use those extra spaces.
My thought was the driveway is on the left side of the property right now as it exists. It's all the way on the left side of the driveway now. And if you had it on the left side, it would be a straight run for all 4 cars. That was my thought.
Aesthetically, it makes it more difficult.
It's what?
Aesthetically, it did not work as well.
No, I mean, you have a side door entrance, so you don't have a front door. So you're just saying that it would be more brick on one side of the garage door than the other.
Well, it wouldn't be
We
all that
still have a
symmetrical,
column.
I think is the issue. We're
Yeah.
trying to make it as
I
symmetrical.
said
as
it wouldn't be
possible.
symmetrical, I
Well, the-
understand that.
But yeah, but we still have the column here. In order to make this a straight run, you come way too close to the column, and the column can't go any closer to
It
the
could go
side
a
yard.
foot, but
Yeah. So that didn't help, in my opinion, it didn't help the parking issue because of this column that we need.
And the other side effect is, from being in the center, to the right of the property is a parking space of approximately 6 foot on the other property, there's about 6 foot. And then whatever you have left on your property, it would be added to that parking space. You know what I mean?
No.
From here over to the next property. That was my only thought.
We want to compromise between the aesthetics and the convenience, go to an 18-foot door.
That too. Yeah.
That's
Could you-
true, yeah.
That would help, because we were already, this is not showing the 12, but we'd already gone to a 12-foot from a 10-foot. We can go all the way across. Can certainly get a 16-foot door in there.
Then you'd have
When
to,
did we start worrying about how people drive?
well, if you don't use the parking space
If
inside
they're
the
gonna wreck
garage.
their car, let them wreck their car.
On your 17th birthday when you got a license.
Eric, quick question, just to
Get better
clarify this.
insurance.
Are they required parking spaces?
No,
No.
There's an extra. No,
They're
you're
extra.
right.
they only need two.
Right, so I don't think we should worry about it.
I'm not worried.
But I said that, yeah.
Okay.
They're extras. Okay.
Terry, in your professional opinion, are there any negatives associated with the plan that you've designed?
No.
To the extent there would be any negatives somewhere in the universe, to the positives that we're gonna be improving light, air, and open space, we're gonna be improving for flood protection, we're taking the property off of the line, we're moving it 3 feet over with the new design. So all of those benefits outweigh any possible negatives.
I think they do.
Unless the board has any further questions, Mr. Warburg, Mrs. Stein are here to the extent you would like to talk to them, but we'd rest on the merits of the case.
Any board questions? Is there anyone here from the public like to speak? Please come, state your name and be sworn in, please.
State your name and address.
My name is Arthur Babian. I'm the next-door neighbor. I've been living in Margate since
State your name and
1972.
address and then be sworn in, please.
My name is Arthur Babian, 9619 Pacific Avenue.
Okay, do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
I do.
Thank
There you go, now you're on.
I have a lot of objections.
Which side where do you live? Directly next door?
If you look at the picture in,
Are you on the
That's-
Longport side of her house?
Yes.
I'm on the corner lot.
Directly next to her?
Yes, there's a
Okay.
picture in the output, but I wasn't quite sure what you would present. My property is the one with the white picket fence. I'm on the corner of Monroe and Pacific. This house is next door to me. And on the other side of them is a conversion from way back in the 70s. And there's a large parking area to the right side of their house. I didn't realize that in handouts, they do actually have a picture of their property, and my property shows there as well. Excuse me if I'm a little bit nervous. I first found out about this on Tuesday, since Monday was a President's Day. I didn't get the mail. Tuesday was when a certified letter arrived.
That was last week, right?
Last week, so it's been 9 days since I got the letter. I bothered both the secretary and Roger on Tuesday or Wednesday of last week, and I've been there today finalizing whatever objections I had. To begin with, I read some of the information which they supplied, so I guess the best point to begin would be to start referring to some of their comments. They were to supply a description of their, what they were going to be doing. And I wrote down a couple of comments.
Would you
Under
speak
the
into the
description
microphone,
which
please?
they
Would you
supplied.
speak into the microphone,
Oh,
please?
sorry.
This is being recorded. Thank you.
Under the description which they supplied, the first thing they said was they were not asking for a multifamily dwelling. Well, I don't think they could fit a multifamily dwelling on this lot. The second thing said they were not asking for a 2.5-story house. And I think you mentioned that you conserve the height or whatever. The height conservation is only 3 feet. If you look at the drawing which they supplied, you can see that they show a maximum height on their documents. I guess you all have pictures of it. You can see where the first, if I call the first floor where the garage and so on is, please forgive me, I'm used to first story, second story, third story, and then there's the attic thing. So if I slip and call the garage area the first floor, I hope you all know what I mean. If you look at the dimensions they supplied, which I'm not gonna dispute, they show that the peak of their roof is 27 plus 9 above whatever reference area there is.
First floor, finished first floor.
Whatever.
Right.
You'll see on the side also they have another dimension, and it goes 3 foot above. I'm assuming that 3 foot above is the maximum height of the building?
30
Correct
feet
me
is
if
correct, yes.
Yeah, so all they're saving in height is 3 feet. So I'm not quite sure what savings there is there in terms of a floor.
But none of these things are variances.
I
We-
agree.
We
I
have
agree.
no control.
I have, and
So if
I'm-
you have objections, please limit it to the variances that they're asking for.
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I'm just saying that that's all we can do, so.
Okay. My feeling, which maybe it's not the law or whatever is, if they're building any property, they should try and minimize their effect on existing structures. Now, if you look at the lot diagrams, they mentioned that there's a 0 clearance between the present house and my property line. That is correct. And that extends for a distance of about 25 feet along the long lateral line. So when they're saying there's encroachment, the encroachment is only on the order of 125 square feet. They're trying to make that encroachment now go the entire length of the lateral side. And if you look at the dimensions of the building, the living space is some 67 feet, I believe, if I'm recalling correctly. Yes. The older I get. That's an awfully long distance. I mean, think of walking from one end of a house to the other end.
Is there a coverage variance?
Nope.
No, they meet the coverage. I'm going to be,
Front and rear yard setbacks being
yeah,
met too.
I'm
Right.
only concerned about the side clearance on my side of the property.
Okay.
Since there's nobody else, I assume, to discuss the other properties, I'm
Right.
not taking their, now, if, do you have a diagram of the lot? My house, if you look on a picture, is about 5 feet away. Now, they're saying that all.
5
their-
feet away from the property line or from the proposed
My
house?
house, I believe, is 5 feet on one side of the property line. The present structure is right on the property line.
So there'll be 8.5 feet between your house and the new house, is that correct? Okay.
Now, the difference is that that 1.5 feet, which they're cutting the entire 125 foot of the lot. It's not that they're just limiting it to one location, they're doing it for the whole length. So when they say that they're designing this property to have minimal effects, that's not really the case. Am I allowed to use their documents?
Yes. Use,
Bring the
Terry, would you
microphone.
give him the microphone, please? Which document do you need?
The first page where they listed the layout. My house is presently on this side. I am on looking at the front of the house. My house is located
Yeah,
right
right.
about here. Now, my house occupies approximately this much space, around 25, 30 feet. Maybe 40 feet if you include from the property line on Monroe Avenue.
Excuse me. No disrespect, we have 8 cases tonight. You have to stick to what you object to that variance, nothing else.
Okay. If you go to the floor, they're saying that the smallest house they could build on this property lot, the smallest house they could build was 18 foot.
Correct.
Okay. First thing is, they centered the house right in the center. Now, since on the other side of the house is a property line, my prejudice is, why not move the house 18 inches to the right? Then they meet the 5-foot clearance on my side. On the other side, all you have there is a parking lot where cars from the building there are.
Is that viable?
So I have an existing structure. I moved into Margate in 72. I bought this house in 74. Since 74, there's been a lot of constructions. I remember when Jack Blumenthal wanted to build.
Would that be something you would consider? No. Okay,
Okay.
they won't consider that.
Of course not.
We could vote no, but.
No, of
but
course they're
that's-
not going to consider it. Everything which they mentioned about taking pains to observe what's been built and so on is basically just talk.
Okay.
Nowhere in the diagrams or in the procedures has it been met. Now, they say they must build an 18-foot wide house.
Right.
Okay.
That becomes 17 inside.
If you look at the second-story floor space, look at the width of the houses and look what's been listed there. On the first floor, if you look there,
Not to cut you short,
yeah,
they could build a 2.5-story house there, the same length back.
I have no objection.
15
I have
foot
no
wide.
objection.
It would be no different to you at all.
My objection
You'd end up
is
with an ugly
the
house next
18 inches near my
Okay.
house.
Okay.
That's all I basically am stressing.
Okay.
The 18 inches running approximately 40 feet, and if they want to
And
come
you'll end up with an
closer,
ugly house next door.
Okay, Mike.
Excuse me?
Mike, stop.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear
It
that.
doesn't matter. We understand your objection.
Okay. Now, they're saying the 18 foot
It
is
doesn't
a-
matter what they say. All we need is your objection.
Okay. My objection is they're using an 18-foot wide house, and I don't think they can justify an 18-foot wide house versus a 16.5-foot wide house, or moving the house 18 inches to the other side.
Okay.
Now, one thing which I wasn't quite sure about until today, I saw in a diagram they call for pilings. Roger told me that that's not a consideration for the zoning.
Correct.
But when they go to build this house, they're going to be driving piles, and they're going to be driving it closer because of if they granted this extra variance, it's going to be closer to my house, and I have no idea how many piles they're
See
going to.
Mr. Galantino on the.
Yeah,
end
I
there?
left a
You can visit
message.
him.
Unfortunately, he couldn't contact me today.
I understand that, but that's not a matter of the board. And that's a matter of the building department. If you would like to talk to him about
Well-
it, maybe something can be
Well, I
done.
don't see the point in the zoning approving a plan, and then there's problems with the construction and so on.
That's,
I can't be an expert on that.
and we can't either.
Okay.
Okay.
Then my objection is the 18 extra
Got it.
inches is not necessary.
Thank
Now,
you.
I believe this is a hardship. I have not heard anything
Sir,
about hardship.
we have to cut you off. We've heard your objection, we understand your objection, and we'll consider it, but everything else is extra, and we need to move on. I don't think there's anything else that you're adding, and we understand you object to 3.5 feet instead of 5 feet.
Okay,
on your
one
side.
other, then let me bring up another point. If you look at the overhang on the roof, that's another 1.5 feet, which comes closer. Now, if you look at that, we don't get much snow, but we do get snow, and I remember winters when we had a lot of snow. All that snow from the roof line is going to come right into my property. Again, I don't see what the big objection would be to shift the house
Right,
18
we understand
inches the
your
other way.
point, but the setback is to the building, not to the roof overhang.
I'm talking
So-
about the side of, I'm just pointing out that the roof also.
I understand that,
Okay.
right.
My proposal obviously is, why don't they just move it 18 inches away from the house?
Right.
And-
I understand you.
and-
It's an alternative, and they don't want to do it. So we have to vote on it based on what they want to do.
Can I address that one issue?
You can.
I realize I don't have to address the issue, but just to make things clear, we cannot shift the house over because that would make us too close to the opposite property line and no windows would be allowed on that entire length of the house. We would not meet emergency egress
Where's the
codes.
cutoff there?
Less than 3 feet.
Got it.
This is why I made
Okay.
it 3 foot 6 inches to be
Got it.
sure we could have windows.
Do you understand that?
I understand what she said, yes.
Okay,
Then I would request that they cut the house down to 16.5.
okay. Thank you. You don't need to answer.
I'm not going to. Just want to clarify the legal issue, not what the gentleman's argument was. We don't have too many true hardships. The true hardship is the lot width requirement is 40 feet. It's a buildable lot of record, which is 25 feet. That in and of itself equals a legal hardship. So regardless of the fact that he says we should move the house over, technically, the law states if you have an undersized lot of record, by its very nature, and Roger pointed this out in his report, it's a hardship case. The hardship is we can't acquire land on either side, so you have to look at it with what is the best possible planning alternative. We think this is it. Obviously, that gentleman doesn't, which is his prerogative, but obviously, the board has to make a decision based upon the merits. If everybody who came to the board had an objector who said, move the house over this way, move the house over that way, you're gonna have lots that are gonna have houses that are completely askew in town.
Eric, we understand this.
Okay, and we
We understand his objection, and we will weigh your case, and we will weigh his objection, so. Anything else?
We don't have it.
Okay. Anyone else in the public have any comments, questions? Public portion is closed. If there's no further discussion from the board, would you read a motion, please?
Someone needs to make a motion for C variance relief for the following 3 variances: a side yard setback to the buildings and deck on the right side of 3.5 feet where 5 feet is required. Same variance on the left side of 3.5 feet where 5 feet is required, and then the combined side yard setbacks to the building and the deck of 7 feet where 10 feet is required. There are 3 submission checklists set forth in Mr. McCarnan's report regarding the area map, the scale of the survey, and the survey being older than a year. And the conditions will be, all conditions in Mr. McCarnan's report of February 24th, and the applicant will comply with any representations made by or on its behalf during the course of the hearing.
Real quick on it, Eric, you guys are going to supply a survey, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, so that.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second it.
Tom Collins,
Make me go first. Very difficult case. I actually was siding with the neighbor to the point of, you have a parking lot next door to the house, but then Terry explained very well, and the windows and the egress are primary to the safety and the well-being of Margate. It is a hardship lot. I think you've taken it to the highest and best use for what you can do. I understand the neighbor's position about it being close to his house, but for 40 feet or whatever's existing, he's going to be much further away from his house. So he will gain some air, light, and open space. And we're getting rid of an old, dilapidated, non-flood compliant, non-FEMA house. Just helps our ratings. CIO in Avalon gained $1.6 million.
Yeah.
You saw that? That was really nice. And every time we do one of these things, it helps our ratings. It's, unfortunately for the neighbor, it's not great for him, but for Margate, it is really good. For the neighborhood, it's really good, and I vote in favor.
Clem Osleski,
Now, these 25-foot wide lots that we have in town are always interesting, to say the least. And designing structures that go on them are equally interesting. I've done a few. Excuse me. But the bottom line here is certainly a betterment for the city, considering what is there now. And to attempt to change the side yard setbacks at the advantage of one property owner to the disadvantage of the other property owner is certainly not very equitable. All the variances here are a function of the 25-foot narrow lot. I think the design as presented is done just about the best you could on there, so I vote in favor.
Richard Patterson,
I'd like to consider any neighbors' comments, objections, or whatever. And in 20 years of doing this, the narrowest house that we've approved, in my recollection, it was 16 feet with no elevator. And I know there's different requirements when there is an elevator. I initially thought, hey, that's a good idea, move the house over. To have no windows on that side, safety issue, problem issue on the whole inside of the house, it's just not practical, it just can't be done. So I think with what they've got, they're doing the best they can. And I approve the application. I don't see any detriments.
Michael Cristaldi.
I think in the long run, I do feel sorry for the neighbor for what's going on there. But there can be a 2.5-story, 15-foot wide house that would look terrible. And I think you would be madder at that than this 15 inches you're fighting for. I think, Terry, I think you did a great job designing this house on that lot, being a 25-foot lot. I have to vote yes on this, just for the neighborhood. And I do feel bad for you.
Jim Galantino.
I think more snow is going to, less snow will come on your property due to the wall that's so close to right now, your fence line. And for the life of me, I've been driving down the street 1,000 times. I don't remember ever seeing that house. It just never, it's one of those houses that just didn't stick out. And then on top of that, the parking issue, you'll gain an additional parking because of there was only one spot there now. The hardship was caused by the lot size, and again, the detriment outweighs the negative. I approve the application.
Craig Palmisano.
Terry, you did a very nice job with the 25-foot lot. The house is really nice. It's brutal. It's brutal, 25 feet. You have an 18-foot wide house, and I can't see really going much less than that. The 3.5 feet, you pick up a couple of feet there. If the house is farther away than what it was from you, I have to approve it.
Ron Grupo.
I also empathize with the neighbor and his concerns, but we're getting rid of a non-compliant flood house, and I believe that the lot does truly create hardship, so I approve the application.
Application passes 7-0.
Okay, before we start the next case, I wanted to thank Mr. Collins for filling in for me when the vice chairman was missing, and we're going to take a 5-minute break. You ready? Next case is Krevitz Family LP, 422 North Nassau Avenue, Block 515, Lot 13, located in the S40WF district, seeking C variance relief for trellis location, additional accessory structure on property, and possibly others in order to construct a new single-family home. Taxes and water or payments are current, and proof of advertising and notifying have been satisfied. Mr. McLarnon?
Thank you, Chairman and board members. My report is dated February 21st, 2020, in regard to the Krevitz Family LP, 422 North Nassau Avenue, Block 515, Lot 13, in the S40WF zoning district. This is not a hardship case. It's a C2 criteria, substantial benefit. Background is as follows. The applicant is seeking relief from the ordinances of the city of Margate in order to construct a new single-family dwelling on Orient Canal on Nassau Avenue. The S40WF zoning district has some provisions that differ from other standard S40 zoning requirements due to the riparian portions of the property, creating somewhat of a hardship, but not in this case. Although the building itself complies with zoning, there are some accessory structures proposed that are triggering several variances. So the zoning chart starts on the bottom of page 1, continues on page 2, and to the top of page 3. The documents reviewed are covered on page 3, and the variances in section 3 on page 3 are as follows. I do want to point out, it's my understanding that a large portion of these variances are going away by moving this outdoor fireplace to be part of the building. It becomes part of the building structure. It's not an accessory structure anymore. So it doesn't fall under the accessory outdoor fire pit requirements. So there's 2 remaining variances required. One is a trellis width, whereas the maximum permitted trellis width is 8 linear feet, and 9.83 feet, or 9 feet 7 inches, is proposed. That's based on Section 175, Attachment 4, Schedule B1, and Section 175-32E5. So all the outdoor fireplace issues go away. And the last one is a swimming pool clearance, whereas a 3-foot clearance is required around the water's edge of the pool, and less than 3 feet is proposed to the steps. I scaled it. I don't think it's that much of an issue. There is still ample space to get around that pool, but it does not meet the intent of the ordinance. The comments, we don't have to discuss some of these items now, but comment number 1, a trellis occupies a portion of the raised rear deck, and it exceeds its allowable width by 1 feet 7 inches and requires a variance. Comment number 2 goes away. Comment number 3 remains. I discussed that, discussing the variance. The pool equipment is not shown and is required to be shown so that it be provided by testimony. The outdoor shower requires a method of drainage to be shown, and one is not shown. And that can be a condition of approval. The lower deck shall not exceed 18 inches above grade, and it appears that it does not, and it does exceed 18 inches, which would require a variance. Testimony can clarify that. The plans indicate a driveway curb cut width of 20 feet, which at the time of the application was permitted, so a variance is not required. Proper landscaping and number of shrubs is required, and that can be a condition of approval. And all roof gutters and leaders may be extended through a watertight opening in the bulkhead, and an overflow device shall be provided. This way, basically, you're eliminating all of the impervious coverage runoff by putting it out to the to Orient Canal, which is permitted by DEP. That concludes my report at this time, and I turn it over to the applicant.
Thank you, Mr. McLaurin. Mr. Chairman, Eric Olson on behalf of the applicant, Krevitz Family LP. This is another pretty interesting case because when the application first went in, Mr. McLaurin had a number of comments, which upon getting his report, the applicant said, you know, we agree. Much of what they had originally applied for could have been fixed to eliminate a number of variances. So Mr. McLaurin correctly noted much of the variance relief we were seeking is now not being sought. The house itself requires 0 variances. What we're really talking about is a small variance amount for the trellis and a de minimis area around the pool. That's it. So without further ado, I will have, since Mr. Petrella is here and prepared the plans, I'll have him walk through the house. It's an unbelievable house. So the board could at least get an idea of what we're trying to do here. Mr. and Mrs. Krevitz were very intricately involved in the design, so much so that when Mr. Barnhart and Mr. Petrella showed them what they could do with the outdoor fireplace to make it no variance, he said, this is great. This is actually a better idea. So thank you, Roger. Thank you, John and Mark. Mark, I'm going to have you step up and be sworn, and then we'll walk you through. And we'll try to be brief.
Eric, do we need to walk through the house if there's no variances? I
No,
mean,
not really.
We can see it's a
No.
really nice house.
We're here, but that's okay. Mark doesn't need to speak. You can answer questions about the trellis.
I understand that. but
All right.
Maybe he
The
could give
walls
us
are
a
gonna be
tour of the
open.
house when it's open, and then that would.
That's a good idea.
There we go.
You could just, stay,
Mark, just if you don't mind,
just your name and address for the record.
Are you gonna,
And John, too. Just each of you state your name and address for the record, and I'll swear you.
In the microphone, please.
Mark Petrella, SOSH Architects, 1020 Atlantic Avenue, Atlantic City.
John Barnhart, Arthur Ponzio Company, 400 North Dover Avenue, Atlantic City.
And do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
Yes.
I do.
I know they both appeared before the board. Mr. Petrella is an architect, and Mr. Barnhart is a planner and engineer.
yes, we accept our credentials.
Excellent. Mark, just tell us about the trellis and the pool, and we'll have John with some planning testimony. If the board has questions for the homeowners, they're here as well.
So when Susan and Steve Krevitz approached me to design their home, one of the points they expressed is the importance of indoor-outdoor living. So what we've done is created a home that accomplishes that. So basically the space that we designed outside is just as important as the space that's designed inside. Some of the exterior features that are important to them include, of course, the pool, but they wanted an opportunity for outdoor dining, some areas with some shade, some areas with some sun, and of course, one of the elements that is part of the variance application, or was, is the outdoor fireplace and TV. So we are proposing to move that back in within the footprint of what's permitted for the building. So we're basically going to push it back so it's 10 feet off of the bulkhead line and 10 feet off of the side property line. And I do have an image of that if the board would care to see that. The trellis feature, the request for variance is an additional 1.7 in depth. So that's the dimension from the face of the house towards the bulkhead. That dimension of 9 feet 7 total in width covers the entire outdoor dining space, which is important to them. So we think that change is de minimis. As far as the house design, we talked about it being indoor-outdoor, so some of the features that we're incorporating are operable window walls. So that's being proposed from the main living space out to the steps leading down to the pool. Also, these glass box structures, we call them out as sunrooms on the plan, so the opportunity is to create operable walls there as well to provide that indoor-outdoors living experience.
The pool, just explain to me what is it that the pool comes up against?
The pool, it's not a large pool.
But where's the shortage and what's there where the shortage is?
But Roger correctly pointed out that the dimension from the edge closest to the house is less than 3 feet from the edge of
The house or that step there?
That step. And I guess
Got it.
that step is considered
Okay.
part of the house.
I got it,
But you can
okay.
step on that step to get around it.
Exactly, I understand.
It says plus or minus 3 feet. But
I mean,
a few
we think
inches
it's
you're
about,
talking about?
right now on the plan, it's 2 feet, but if we had to, we would be willing to shift it.
I was picturing a wall, I see what it
No.
is. There's 2 feet and then a little step, correct?
It's basically like a seat wall, like you know.
Yeah, it's a built-in bench, so you can sunbathe on the
No,
bench.
from the outside of the pool.
Right, from
There's
this
2
edge
feet.
of the water to the front edge of that first step bench.
That's not right. The first step is a bench?
Yes, it's designed as a sunbathing bench.
How high is it?
Seating, 18 inches.
Where's the steps to get down to the pool?
That's where it's.
On the side, I see,
Right.
okay.
So they're kind of cut in, Mr. Patterson, to the bench step, but the bench step is 18 inches high as a vertical member, so technically
Got
you
it.
need clearance around that, but
I
you
see.
could step up that and then walk around.
I understand, that was my confusion.
Mark, you say, you have sketches for the fireplace? I'd like to see how it's gonna move.
So, Mr. Wozleski, the fireplace moves closer to the house. Obviously,
So you're saying it's within the setbacks for the house?
Correct.
Is it part of the house or it's just closer to the house?
It's engaged with those outdoor steps. So if you can envision this just closer to the home. So it's totally outside of the rear yard setback and it's out of the side yard setback. So technically, we could be building the corner of the house there, all the way up.
Okay.
unless the board has questions for Mr. Petrella, Mr. Barnhart's here as well. He's saying we don't need him, but it's up to the board, I guess.
Anything else from the board?
Property
Are you-
owners are here if you'd like to talk to them. Okay.
No? Well, are you okay?
I'm fine, I'll rest on that.
All right. Anyone from the public have any questions, comments? Public portion's closed. Any other questions or comments from the board? Not, would you read a motion, please?
Sure. Someone needs to make a motion for C variance relief for the trellis width of 9.583 feet, where 8 feet is permitted, and from the swimming pool clearance, 3 feet's required, and they're less than 3 feet to that, what they described as that sunbathing step. Roger went through several conditions in his report, so I'll just reference his report. unless modified on the record. Some of those may be modified because a lot of the variances obviously are going away, and the applicant will comply with any other representations it made during the course of the hearing.
Make a motion.
I'll second.
Tom Collins,
Seems like a very basic, simple variance for your property. I do have to say, though, that, Mark, it's unbelievable, some of the things that I see you designing. It's a real compliment, and I think...
He can give us a tour of the house if you'd like.
I might want one. If you see the house that he did, what Jim Leeds did on the boardwalk in Ventnor, I mean, it's just out of this world, and this one is just going to be phenomenal. I mean, you're going to love it.
You have to be sworn in to say thank you.
I'm just so glad that we're getting newer, different components and architecture into Margate instead of the same old thing like Ocean City gets all the time.
So is that a no vote?
And, no, I see no negative. I have no problem with the pool at all. And,
The only negative, Mr. Collins, they have to pay for, have someone to build this house, other than that.
Other than that, I wish you a lot of luck. I vote in favor. I think this is phenomenal.
Clem Osleski,
Just so I'm sure, we're only voting on the trellis and the pool.
Yes.
Yes.
I don't think the pool is any problem, in that it's only that 18-inch bench like it. Our purpose in that 3-foot clearance was for safety, aiding someone in the pool that was in trouble, and I think in this particular instance, the 2-foot clearance is adequate. And as far as the trellis, which is actually a pergola, is concerned, I have one in my yard that's over 30 feet long. I think.
Stop by there. What's your address?
I think the restrictions we have on pergolas is ridiculous. This one is fine. I vote in favor.
Richard Patterson,
I have no variances at my house. My house complies 100%.
You don't have a house.
This board, and rightly so, has been very, very strict on the pool setbacks, and I think this is a rare exception where it just does not apply, and I don't have a problem with it, and hope no applicants take this as an easing up on it, because I just don't see a problem here, and it's the rare case. I am glad that, I think it was the right thing to do to move the fireplace. If I was the neighbor, I think I would have complained, and I think you did the right thing by bringing it a part of your house, and if there's gonna be a TV in it too, it's just more not out there broadcasting across. So I think that was a good move. And the trellis, it would, if we made it 8 feet, it's just like you're wasting space, and it just doesn't make sense, so. I approve the application. I think the house is fantastic, and I agree with Tom. I mean, this is different in quality and everything. I wish you guys did more work down here. Or maybe you do and just don't need variances, which is another great thing. I approve.
Michael Cristaldi,
I think everybody said about everything that can be said about it, being a gorgeous home, the pool thing being de minimis. I agree. I vote yes.
Jim Galantino,
It would seem the egress to get out of the back of the house caused the hardship, with the step being into the 3-foot wraparound of the pool. So I can see that being not a problem. I vote yes.
Craig Palmisano,
Very nice job on the home, it's beautiful. The trellises, get out of the sun, keep you cool, I understand that. And I also want to commend you on the parking you did underneath with the open garage area where it's going to be used as a parking garage. I like that a lot. I approve the project. Good luck. The what?
That's what they wanted.
You wanted it open. I'm glad you did. I like it that way.
Ron Grupo,
I usually also have a problem with the pools because people try and come in and sneak things in that make it so they don't have to abide by the 3 feet, but I do understand that, and I agree with it. I think it's a great idea, and I approve the project.
Application passes 7-0.
Next case is Stephen Baglivo, 418 North Mansfield Avenue, Block 614, Lot 19, located in the S40 district, seeking C variance relief for front yard setback to house and porch and possibly others in order to construct a new single-family home. Taxes and water payments are current, and proof of advertising and notifying have been satisfied. Mr. McLaurin?
Thank you, Board Chairman. The report is based on the application of Stephen Baglivo, 418 North Mansfield Avenue, Block 614, Lot 19, within the S40 zoning district. This is a hardship variance in regard to corner properties, so they're subject to 2 front yards and 2 side yards. It's also a substantial benefit variance, and this is part of a subdivision that was by right, and this is the lot that's carved out of the larger lot that stays on the corner. The applicant is seeking relief from the ordinances of the City of Margate in order to construct a new single-family dwelling on a property that was subdivided by right. The applicant is seeking variances for front yard setback to the building and for the porch along Fulton Avenue and a couple of other items that we will discuss. And it's my understanding, talking to the architect today, that some of these variance requests are actually eliminated. We're able to resolve some of the issues and make things work, as we try to do all the time. So page 2 is the zoning chart, page 3 is the documents reviewed. Section 3 on page 3 is the variances required. 1 is the front yard setback to the building on Fulton Avenue, whereas the prevailing setback is 20 feet and the proposed setback is 18 feet. Again, there's only one other house on this corner, on this block, to measure from, so that's creating somewhat of a hardship in developing the prevailing setback wage. I got bidding on my mind right now. Front yard setback to the porch, Fulton Avenue, whereas the prevailing setback is 10.33 feet and the proposed setback is 7 feet. Not unusual for this area. Side yard setback, whereas the minimum side yard setback required is 10 feet, and the proposed setback is 8 feet to the stair tower, and it's only for like a 10-foot wide section of the property. And it's my understanding that the projection is 2 feet. There was not a dimension on there, and it was drawn larger, but talking to the architect, it is 2 feet. Driveway curb cut number, whereas the maximum curb cuts permitted is 1 10-foot or 18-foot, and 2 are proposed. Pool deck patio, this variance goes away. The architect had it labeled as impervious, and the ordinance does not allow impervious pool decks or any deck in the yard, so that is eliminated. Side yard deck setback, 10 to 18 inches high. The architect has adjusted the deck to be 10 inches above grade, so this variance goes away also. Projections into the side yard, that has been resolved also, that goes away too. So what we have is 4 variances. Waivers requested are 1A area map, which I agree can be waived without any detriment. 1C is a survey, and I believe that the survey, talking with Eric and the applicant, that needs to be submitted because they are referring to existing grades, and I don't have any existing grades by a surveyor. So I believe that they will agree to that.
Absolutely.
And that goes away. That'll be a condition of approval. The required front yard setback, that was discussed. The porch is 9 feet from grade. That's okay, it's just a general comment. Stair towers that's okay now. Curb cuts, they can discuss the curb cuts. Pool deck, that's approved. Comments number 6 and 7 go away. Number 8 goes away. Number 9 continues. My recommendations are standard and advises the board how to weigh the positive and negative criteria in making their decision on this application. So in regard to that, I turn over to Eric.
Thank you, Mr. McLaurin.
Eric, just for the record, Mr. Collins recused himself because the mayor's on the 200-foot list, and he's the designee, but sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before we get started, a couple things. The plans that were submitted by Mark Zawacki. He is not here this evening. Mr. Slayton is with me tonight. Mr. Zawacki unfortunately had surgery and is not able to make it. And a number of issues had arisen, which I do want to point out that Mr. McLaurin went over and above to really try to accommodate us, to get us in, to make sure that we were able to present a case. Obviously, it's for you gentlemen to make that decision whether or not this goes forward. But for a good part of today, Roger's time was spent assisting us to get to where we need to be now. Mr. Baglivo was resourceful enough to have Mr. Slayton come and review the plans. He is a licensed architect in the state of New Jersey. He's not testified before this board before, so I do want to have him sworn, his qualifications accepted, and then presumably he'll walk us through the plan. But I did think it was important enough to put on the record just the hard work that Roger put into this, because I know there was another application that I had, which didn't go forward today, which had a fair amount of intricacies, I'll call them, discovered prior to the hearing, and that one unfortunately could not get on. So Roger's been fairly busy getting ready for tonight's meeting, so thank you.
I want to say it was a collaborative effort on all of us, and I did speak to Mark Zawacki several times today, and I think we were able to resolve a lot of the major sticking points in this application.
And Mr. Baglivo, of course, being the Belichick-esque coach behind the scenes, was able to get everything lined up so we're ready to go tonight, and it's, I don't know, not that late so we can.
None of us are Patriots fans. You might want to change that.
Well, he is the guy. Andy Reid, he won a Super Bowl finally. I'll say Andy Reid. That would make Roger Mahomes. So, all right. So, Joe, if you don't mind, Mr. Manos is going to swear you in, and then we'll get you qualified to walk through the plan.
Yeah, Mr. Slayton, just state your name and business address for the record.
It's Joseph Slayton, S-L-A-T-O-N, and it's 20 Lawrence Avenue, Barrington, New Jersey.
And do you swear affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
Yes.
Very important matter before this board. You are a licensed architect in the state of New Jersey, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Just give us some of your qualifications, how long you've been licensed, and then I'm going to ask Mr. Manos or the chairman to accept your qualifications.
I was accepted in the board in 1993, I believe. I'm a licensed architect in New Jersey, Pennsylvania. I have a master's degree from Columbia University. Been in front of boards for many years, on many different occasions. This is the first time here in Margate, and I have to say I enjoy this community. It is a nice community.
Mr.
We'll accept his qualifications.
Thank you. All right, Joe, you have a plan that Mr. Zawacki prepared, and as Mr. McLaurin had indicated, many of the variances on his report have gone away. Mr. Baglivo has made adjustments accordingly. So why don't you walk us through the variances we're seeking? We'll just go one by one.
Yeah.
Can I ask you a question first about one of the variances? What's the space between the two driveways? Is it 18 feet?
21.
All right, thank you. So there's a legal space between the driveways.
Yeah, so I understand what you're getting at, Mr. Patterson. If the board were to grant the variances, you'd have driveways and a space in the middle where it wouldn't be an elimination of an off-street space.
That's what created the new rules.
Right. And I know that that's been a big deal
Right.
because people would put two driveways in and they lose a spot in the middle. Effectively, it messes up the parking.
Right.
Mr. Baglivo's been particularly careful with that. His product in town is one of the best products you can get. He knows what you have to have in the middle, so that 21 feet's there. I'm sorry, Joe.
No, that's fine.
Okay, so let's start with the front yard setback on Fulton, okay? We know that there's a setback with one other house, which is our default now. If that house weren't there, the default would be 5, but we have to be bound by the other house, which is 20 feet back. Mr. Baglivo is seeking a 2-foot deviation, 10% of that amount of the 20 feet. Still fairly significantly further than the minimum, but it's still a variance. So to walk us through the difference between what we're seeking and what we're actually required to have.
So if I could start a little bit different tack, and that is the existing structure that was there that was demoed. I believe that existing front yard setback was 16.9 feet. I believe that's from the survey, and the neighboring house, I always think is, if you have two, somebody's gonna go first and somebody's gonna go second, and whoever gets there first shouldn't negatively impact the second. So if you were to take the two and average 16.9 feet and 20 with the neighbor, you're at 17, and we're asking for 18, which is very de minimis. The flip side, if they're first, they could actually go and say 16.9 is their front yard setback, where the code minimum, I believe, is 5, so.
Well, you're correct. If the other neighbor had demolished before Mr. Baglivo, the setback would be 5 feet. Because there'd be no other house there, he would have torn his down, and both neighbors would have a default of 5 feet, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so we're still further back from that. But we do have a requirement that we have to meet the code, and the code is 20 feet because the other house is 20 feet.
So with us asking for 18, if they're coming in and asking for 17, the average, we're still yet further setback from the street, if you may, by at least a foot. 1.3 feet.
And it's correct, if I'm stating something that's not correct, let me know. If Mr. Baglivo had purchased this house after the other house had been demolished, the number would be 5. If the other house had been demolished and there was no other house.
And there was no other, yeah,
Correct.
there would be nothing to benchmark against.
Right,
And-
so the
and-
benchmark is artificially skewed in a way because of what's there now.
Yeah, but you're dealing with two individual properties. Well, whereas the house on Fulton and Lancaster was recently built, and I believe that one, they had a 16-foot setback for the building and a 5-foot for the porch, and that's within 200 feet, but because it's the end of the block, that really doesn't get included in the average.
Correct. Well, it's a different block, but the board understands that their calculations are based upon some pretty strict rules, but that's to make sure that things line up with the line of sight, and the board's always fairly careful that they don't want to unnecessarily skew the setbacks too close. If they start granting variances one by one, ultimately, all of the homes are closer to the street. Here you only have 2 homes, and if this is granted, this becomes the default setback for the next house at 18, correct?
Correct.
Does that make sense?
Huh?
If the board were to grant this
Yes,
variance,
yes.
18 feet would be the setback for the next house, which we understand is in the process of having some work done. We can't make that representation of when the house will be torn down, but that's going to happen sooner than later. So that would be an 18-foot setback, because then Mr. Baglivo's house would be setting that setback.
So they'll ask for 16?
They should go with 18, because obviously the board will have considered that in its wise knowledge, and hopefully will have said yes by that point. And they'll see how kind of nice house Steve would have built by then. But, okay, so with regard to the 20-foot versus 18-foot, in your professional opinion as an architect, could there be any detriment associated with that?
No. With regards to advancing the MLUL and the zone area, the neighborhood aesthetic is very inconsistent, is a good word. So this is still an increase from the detriment of the rule of 20 being the base.
And, as I said earlier, if this were to be granted, Mr. Baglivo builds a house that's 18 feet back, then the default, the next house will become 18, correct?
Correct.
It's not as if he's asking for 5 feet, and the default goes from 20 to 5, which is a 4-fold increase. It's really just a 10% increase from what's there now to what's being proposed.
Correct, and it's a hardship on timing, if you think about it. If he's the first, he has to abide by a rule, whereas the other person gets the advantage of the difference.
Them's the breaks, I guess,
Yep.
for, to be
We got
first.
it, we understand.
Right, okay. So, let's walk around the house a little bit and go to the porch. Porch on Fulton Avenue also has a default setback change from 10.33 feet. We're being asked for a 7-foot variance, which is a 3.33-foot change to what's allowed by code. Would it be fair to say, in your professional opinion as an architect, that the difference between the 10.33 and 7 is fairly significant as de minimis variance, just as the house was de minimis? This would also be, in a similar way, de minimis, because now you've got a porch that's slightly closer, but not even that close to the 5-foot minimum.
Correct, and I'd also go so far as to say is, again, it's Fulton, it's a corner lot, and the hardship is you're applying a side yard to a front yard, and I'm sure you've heard that concern, and I understand because of the front view corridor you want to create, but the porch being a secondary element and having that relief does further the zone aesthetic in that set. And so for a 3-foot request or less than that is de minimis.
There's also a side yard setback where another little quirk, we're taking care of all these quirks tonight, that we're talking about stairs based on a wider side yard from one to another, and here you've got 10 versus 8. Can you just walk us through that, please?
So, yeah, the first of all, the stair tower, it's only 2 feet by 9 feet, and it's up a story already. So you can walk under it, I believe, and if you were not to have that overhang, you would have basically a blank 40-foot wall. So in terms of aesthetics, let's just forget the side back for a second, setbacks, the side yard setback. The aesthetics of having a blank wall with no articulation is not appropriate, whereas giving more relief visually is in betterment of the zone, if you may.
And you had heard the board earlier in the prior application talk about getting homes out of the floodplain. Currently, this house that's being proposed meets all FEMA and Margate base flood elevation requirements, correct?
Correct.
So to the extent there's a health, safety, and welfare and flood protection benefit that this new construction gives to the board, it's based upon having another step in its flood rating increased as this house comes up, much, much higher up than what was there before, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So we've gone front yard setback to the building, front yard setback to the porch, side yard setback with regard to the stair tower.
I have one more thing with the side yard
Sure.
setback, and that is, the lot is a 65-foot lot, and your zone requires the 10-foot, whereas if it was a 60-foot lot, I believe the zone allows an 8-foot yard setback, which I get it, there's a ratio, and the last point to that is, who are we impacting? It would be the neighboring property, and the neighboring property is under the owner's control in terms of objection, if you may. So it furthers the zone.
But our purpose is to protect the neighboring property, not the owner, for the future owners too. So that really doesn't mean anything. Thank you.
With regard to the overall testimony you've given us, can you see any detriment associated with this project if the board were to agree to grant the remaining variances?
No.
And to the extent there could be some detriment possibly associated therewith, would the positives of this new house and all that we've discussed greatly outweigh the negatives that could possibly be attributed to the house?
Yes.
If the board has any questions, I think that addresses the variances as remaining after Mr. Baglivo and Mr. Slade, but more Mr. Zawacki, worked with Mr. McLaren to remove the others. We would rest on the proofs as submitted.
I have one question. On the Fulton Avenue elevation, it shows, where are you? You're in the,
It's got the red pen out.
I got the red pen. Right there. Is that just a high ceiling in the master bedroom, or is there living space up there?
High ceiling, Mr. Wozleski, Mr. Baglivo just indicated, it's a two-story house.
It's the exact same floor plan as we just built on Lancaster on Blackover.
I'm not sure if everybody heard that.
We
Exact
can't.
same
He's
floor
not
plan.
sworn in.
Oh, well,
He doesn't need to be sworn in. You can just tell us.
all right.
Really.
It's the exact, they don't want that.
Sit.
So, it's the exact same floor plan that they just built on Lancaster, and Mr. Galantino can tell you, it's a two-story house. That extra area is just a higher ceiling. Pretty grand ceiling, deck area there. Jim, I would imagine.
It's high ceilings inside?
On the second floor, yeah.
Does he have chandeliers or anything?
There's no need for a 12-foot chandelier
Okay.
area there.
I just want to make sure, thank you.
I have one question for the architect. What's inside the garage, that square inside the garage? What is that for? There's a square drawn in there.
Toolbox.
It's on the floor in the garage. I was just wondering what that is.
It's an error.
It's a what?
It's an error.
Error.
Salt box. He wasn't laughing at you. Okay. I'm sorry, continue.
No, unless the board has anything further, Mr. Baglivo is here if you would like him to be sworn, but otherwise, we would rest on the proofs.
So, where's the pool equipment going? I've never honestly, I forget.
Is there? Would you like to say that?
Guy in the back?
There's nobody here from the public.
In the back.
I don't see anybody. Public portion is closed. Leo?
Okay, someone needs to make a motion for C variance relief for the following. Front yard setback to the building along Fulton of 18 feet where 20 feet is the prevailing required setback. Front yard setback to the porch along Fulton Avenue where, of 7 feet where 10.3 feet is the prevailing required setback. Side yard setback of 8 feet to the stair tower where 10 feet's required. And the driveway curb cuts, one is permitted and 2 is proposed, but you heard the testimony that there's going to be about approximately 21 feet in between. The waivers, there's a checklist waiver from the submission of an area map. The second waiver will become more of a condition because the applicant's representative indicated that they would supply a survey, and then the other conditions will be any representations made on behalf of the applicant during the course of the hearing and anything in Mr. McLaurin's report of February 24th, unless modified herein, and Roger went through them when he went through his report.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second it.
Clem Wozleski,
The yard setbacks off the streets, excuse me, particularly off Fulton Avenue, are just a result of a very unusual situation where you only have one house to compare it to. So the applicant has made a good presentation on why the calculations as required really aren't applicable in this situation. The other items, the minor setback with the stairwell and the distance between driveway cuts are of no particular negative consequence, so I vote in favor.
Richard Patterson,
I agree with the previous board member. I vote the same way. Yes.
Michael Cristaldi,
I have a request from somebody, I can't mention the name. Could you please put the board and batten on the second floor instead of the first floor? It was just a request from somebody, but I cannot mention, but I do approve.
I think it's you.
Good project.
Jim Galantino,
So the hardship was caused by the definitive setback. You couldn't figure out where it was because there was only one house on the street. And that to me, so you had to go with a 20, and that caused, to me, it caused a hardship on the setback. And the overhead, the 2-foot projection, you walk underneath of it, doesn't really affect anybody's line of sight standing on the street. I vote yes.
Craig Palmisano,
It's a beautiful designed house. The other house is on Fulton, which is not a heavily traveled street. Nobody really walks down that street on the sidewalks at all. And the other houses seem to be just in keeping with yours, and it's minimus. I approve.
Ron Grupo,
I don't see any negative impact from granting the variances, so I approve.
I'll approve, but taking an inch here and an inch there is, I don't think that's a good thing for us, but I'll approve.
Application passes 7-0.
Thank you.
We should keep the one packet, the Harding.
That's, Roger, are we gonna keep that pack, or should, you think they're gonna redo it?
Is it getting redesigned?
Probably.
I don't know which plan, so I would keep both. I would keep,
We have two?
well, there's a variance plan, there's an architectural plan. so-
Oh, so keep everything and you'll replace it, so keep it, and we'll, if they've changed it, we'll get a new one. All right, and due to some, circumstances that came up, we're gonna put off the, discussion of the tree ordinance till next month.
Whoa!
It is, yeah, that's fine. Notes to self.
Do I hear a motion to, do you have anything? I'm sorry, settle down. Do we have anything else? May I hear a motion to adjourn second? All in favor?
All right, adjourned.